Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 51, part B. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge on the CGS forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. So I take it you've met these guys before. Bunch of authoritarian fearmongers. Even your boyfriend, old boyfriend, he tortures your father with his heat vision. Huh? I'm surprisingly unsure how to feel about that. So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, Teen Titans 51, I absolutely adored the exchanges between Ravager and Wonder Girl. So it was when I was reading that, I'm like, all right, we got to talk about that right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Our sponsor for this episode is YouBuyNow.com. YouBuyNow is your toy and collectibles source. They are now featuring the Smallville Series 2 complete action figure set. The list price is $74.99, only $59.95 at YouBuyNow.com. This set contains Impulse, Green Arrow, Clark Kent, Aquaman, and Cyborg. And Jim, that Justice episode is probably one of my favorite episodes from last season. And this is the set of all the figures who were walking across in that scene. And I'm like looking around my room like, where can I put these action figures? Because they're like the perfect display models. I've got to convince my wife that that's exactly what they are. But everything that I put in this ad, Jim, is like all stuff that I want. And I don't know how I'm going to pull this one off.
When you try talking her into it, can I please be present for that? Because that'll be fun. Bring a little camera, record it for the show.
She's more likely to say no if you're here.
But she's less likely to hit you.
Oh, that's true, too.
You know, if there's a witness there, she may put down the mace.
Is it worth getting hit if I get the figures?
Ooh, that's a toughie. Hey, yo.
Well, look at this one, Jim. They've got the Bizarro 13-inch deluxe collector's figure. Regularly $69.90, only $66.49. I don't know if you've been checking out. I remember when we were in Chicago. Did you happen to see any of the DC Direct display cases?
Oh, yeah.
These figures? Dude,
yeah.
These make the Mego figures. I loved the Mego figures when I was a kid, but these put them to shame. They're 13 inches tall. They look like they're straight out of the comic book. They've got real cloth clothing. I've seen the Nightwing one. It looks incredible. It's got his sticks, which are able to be put into the back and then able to be taken out and posed. These are fully posable figures. The Bizarro one, he comes with the chain that has the number 1 symbol on it. He's got that right on his chest, but it's a fully movable, so it's a very fluid. It's not like attached to him or anything. This is one of those figures. This is a conversation piece. People who know comic book characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the general public knows them. The cool thing about this one is people who don't even know comic books, if you have a Bizarro figure on display, they're going to look at that and they're definitely going to be able to relate it to Superman in some capacity because of just the costume similarities. They're going to be like, who is this guy? And I love stuff like that because first of all, it's a good-looking action figure. It looks just like Bizarro from the comics. It is also one of those things where it gets people talking because I've got, my comic book room, I've got covers on the wall, I've got posters on the wall, I've got action figures set up on my shelf. I even have some of the Corgi cars and stuff like that around. So stuff like that to add to like the top of my bookshelf or something like that is right up my alley. I think I'm a definite on that one. The next thing, Jim, I noticed was the new Teen Titans Series 2 action figure set. Now, this is stuff from the Wolfman and Perez run. They've got Deathstroke, they've got Terra, they've got Robin, and they've got Jericho. That is one of my all-time favorite stories. Now, I can't get all of these, but this is $59.96 regularly, only $47.96 at YouBuyNow.com. I'm going to definitely get either the Smallville set or this one. And first, when I saw the Smallville set, I'm like, that's what I'm getting for my desk display. Judas Contract is one of my favorite of all time. To have the figures done in the Perez style, so this is going to be a tough month. I've pretty much sold myself on the Bizarro figure. I don't know now between the Smallville ones and I can't buy both sets, but you can't argue with the price either. You're getting a sizable discount on them, so I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm definitely getting one of the sets. Jim, do you have any kind of display set up, or are you looking to set up any kind of displays?
No, I'm not trying to do it. Be quiet. You evil man, you. What are you doing? Well, come on, Jim, why don't you just try this one? Yeah, here, borrow this comic, read this comic, yeah.
And what he says, I love this. Every time you say that, last time you said this, you said it with Catwoman. How many issues of Catwoman do you have now?
Hey, just back to issue 50.
So this means you're setting up a display of some sort. But this is a great thing about YouBuyNow.com. It's a great place to browse, take a look around, find your favorite stuff, from action figures to statues to busts and so much more. YouBuyNow.com is your shopping source. Thank you for your sponsorship, YouBuyNow.com. And it is a cool site. Even if you just want to go browse around, go ahead and visit YouBuyNow.com. They have full color pictures of all the action figures. It's fun to just see the stuff that's out there. They don't just have DC stuff. They have stuff from film. They have stuff from TV. They have stuff from different comic companies, Marvel, straight on through to the independents. There's a lot of cool stuff to check out at YouBuyNow.com. So go ahead and browse through and just take a look at some of the things there. It's definitely worth checking the site out. As always, we are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Thank you again for supporting us with Podcast Alley, Pop Kern, and iTunes reviews. Anything you do to let people know about us is tremendously helpful, and we do appreciate that. We want to remind everyone to check out RagingBullets.com. We have news on where the show is headed, updates on top bullets of the month, funny bullets by Squatch, Love and Capes the webcomic by Tom Zoller, bullet points reviews, sketches, columns by listeners, and so much more. Join us with your top bullets. This episode, Jim and I are going to be doing September's top bullets, the best of the month. Please send your top 5 to topbullets@googlemail.com. David Wallace will be kind enough to tabulate them for us for a special monthly segment. We all love to laugh, and show us your sense of humor by participating in Funny Bullets. Send them to funnybullets@gmail.com. Don't be afraid to send in your own panels for future offerings, because Jeff Squatch Griner from the Tome Podcast is definitely looking for your submissions as well, and we want to thank Jeff, as always, for putting that together. Please feel free to send in your listener rants, which is a special section on the forum. Shoot us an email comment or even an audio comment. We're looking for web content for the site as well. If you want to participate in the show in some way, contact us at ragingbullets@gmail.com. We love having you a part of the show.
And as always, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Now, funny thing about this show, this was supposed to be JLA 11 and 12. JLA 11 and 12 was recorded with special guest Art Lyon, who was the colorist on JLA number 11. Well, my hard drive crashed. And I was ready to go and edit it. I spent the whole day on Sunday trying to recover the hard drive because it was gold. I mean, Jim and I afterwards, we were so happy with the episode. Art is always a terrific guest and just a great conversationalist. We had a great segment on JLA 11 and 12 that was going to kick off our JLA, and then we were going to go into Black Canary and Green Arrow on another episode, and then hop back to JLA for the Dwayne McDuffie run. So we were starting all that. Well, now that it crashed, Art was kind enough to say, I'll be happy to re-record with you guys, and kudos to Art for that. Thank you very much. But this week, Art's a colorist, so he's out doing, which we're going to talk about on that special episode, what he was doing the coloring work on, because it's really cool. I'm not going to spoil that now. We're going to chit-chat about that when he's on, but he is involved with a very cool project right now that we're going to be happy to share with you guys next week, because he's agreed to join us again. So Jim and I needed to get an episode out to you this week. So we scrambled together and we're like, what are we going to do? Well, we have to do our top bullets from September, so we're going to get that in right now so you guys we can get your top 5 out there, we can comment on them, and then you can hear Jim and my top 5. We've got a full episode coming your way and then some. So, Jim, we've always got stuff to talk about, but this was a mad scramble. Because I spent all day Sunday doing that, and now I had to completely put together notes for this episode. This is Tuesday right now for us. On Wednesday, we're recording Comic Timing's 50th episode. We're a part of a segment that we're joining Ian Levenstein and a few other special guests for. And then you and I are back to recording on Thursday with Art Lyon again. And I have to edit a show in the next 2 days to get that out, because I would like to have something out on Wednesday So this is going to be a nutty few days. But anyway, thank you very much for your patience. Hopefully you checked out the website or checked out the forum and you found out what was going on. I did post on there that this episode was going to be out on Wednesday, so hopefully you got that. And thanks for your patience and understanding, because it's been a frustrating few days to have to re-record an episode and then not only that, but have to put together an episode. It's been crazy. I'm excited, though, because the content for both of these is going to be a lot of fun. Jim, let's go ahead and start with the listener top bullets for September. We have, the first one is number 5, Booster Gold. Fun title of comical moments offering a tone of action with a deepening mystery developing this spin-off from 52 as an awesome hit. And that's from Philly C. Jim, I'm having such a good time with Booster Gold right now. And we've only had a couple issues in here with Booster Gold. This is a series that I see becoming another one of my favorite series as it continues to go on.
Hey, dude, I did 2 speeding bullets on the first 2 issues of this title. So I think my opinion of this title is very out there and very publicly known.
To me, it's a fun book. I love time travel stories because I love the possibilities of visiting the past and possible futures. And actually, one of my top bullets this month, and I'm not talking about Booster Gold, one of the things that I liked about it was it shows something in the past that has an effect on the past from another character, from who we know from present day. And I'm being very vague right now. You'll understand when we get to my top bullets. I'll explain what I'm talking about. But this is exactly the kind of thing I like. I love stories that can go into the past and they can be historical pieces and show us different moments in the past. I'm so excited for the fact that Booster can go pretty much so anywhere and to any universe. So we could see him in various different multiverses and various different Earths, and we're going to see all kinds of storytelling possibilities. So that's going to be a very fun book. Jim, number 4 was Countdown. From week to week, this book is quickly reaching the enjoyment level that 52 did last year. And I totally agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
That is my first book I read now, right out of my stack.
Oh, dude, definitely. I think I've gushed over it enough, and I'll be gushing about it in a couple seconds.
Number 3 is Green Arrow Black Canary Wedding Special. A true roller coaster of comics from start to finish. This book had everything in it that I had been hoping for. Comedy, romance, action, and snapper car. Well, 3 out of 4 wasn't bad, was it? And that's from Andrew King.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
That was a cool issue.
Oh, God, yeah. I tell you, for me, this month, that was number 6. That was my number 6. I'll say right now it's not in my top 5. If I did my traditional where I combine multiple stuff and whatnot, it would have definitely easily been in my top 5. All of this whole wedding stuff that they were doing, just how each piece connects with the other, I hope they do a massive trade on all of this and put it all together, throw some JLA stuff in there, throw beginning of some of the ending of the Green Arrow and the beginning of the Green Arrow Black Canary, throw it all into one mega trade, because I would pick it up in a heartbeat.
We did a spoiler warning, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you didn't read the Green Arrow Black Canary Wedding Special, fast forward a little bit, because I want to talk about something right now.
Okay.
Dude, when do you think they took Ollie? I have my theory on it. I read the book 3 times, because I'm like, when did they do this?
You want to know what I think?
Go ahead.
At the wedding, when they did the massive invasion into the Batcave, that was a diversion to snatch Ollie out of there and replace him with something. I don't know what they replaced Ollie with, but they replaced him with a villain.
Did you read number 1?
No, I haven't yet.
Oh, all right, I'm not saying nothing. I'll bite my tongue there because you haven't read it yet. And we're only going to talk about the wedding special. You know when I think something happened, though? Because we can talk about that one because we're talking about this right now. Remember when he shot the arrow into the air?
Yeah.
You never see him again. He fires the arrow. The camera follows the arrow the whole time.
Yeah.
It flashes maybe to other people. You don't see him again. That's when it happened. So anybody out there, go ahead back and read that issue. Take a look at the part where he fires the arrow. And you know what I'm talking about? I'm going to keep it vague.
Right.
That's when it happened.
Okay.
That we were not spoiling much of anything. Go ahead and and do that. We'll leave it at that for right now. You and I are going to talk about this issue loosely when we do our Green Arrow Black Canary special, because we're going to do all kinds of jumping around and talking about all kinds of things. It's going to be, when we do that Green Arrow Black Canary special, it's going to be less of a formal review of one particular issue. We're going to start at the end of the Green Arrow series and have some special guests. We're going to talk about that whole series and how it ended. You and I are going to talk loosely about the Black Canary stuff leading up to the wedding, and then we're going to jump into a little discussion about the wedding. So we're going to do that in a 3-pronged attack on that one show. So I've already figured out how we're going to do that and just kind of lump it into some real big talk about how we liked how that all played out and what we felt about it. And was there anything that we wanted that maybe didn't happen? And then we'll talk right about the new series and wherever the new series is at. So that's where our focus discussion will be, though. We'll kind of have a loose discussion about everything leading up to it, and then we'll do a heavy discussion about maybe the first issue or two of the series, depending on how many are out when we get to that episode. So kind of fun to talk about the new series that way. Jim, number 2 this month from the listeners, the Sinestro War. Now with the introduction of the one-shot books giving us an in-depth look at the certain aspects of this war, the Sinestro Corps simply continues to be one of the greatest crossover stories ever created, and that's from David Wallace. Jim, the one-shots, that was another thing. I know in a couple of listener rants, when we get to that listener rant, though, I'm probably going to pull casually from them. I'm going to get in everybody's comments, but I'm going to kind of shorten some of them so that way we can get them all in when we eventually get to that. But one of the things that I saw in there was a talk about the fact that they're doing these one-shots now and how they were wishing that was contained within this story. What are your feelings on the one-shots? I can understand that people are on a budget now, and a lot of people are fighting the budget constraints with all the books coming out. To me, the one-shots, I don't want to say you didn't have to read them. You really didn't, because they just kind of, like the one for Parallax, for example. I don't know that you necessarily need to read it to understand the story that's going on in Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. But it was a darn cool story focusing on Kyle in a way that probably the actual miniseries never would. I don't know if you agree with that or not. It was a Ron Marspen story. It really focused on Kyle, not only on his, the change, but also gave us some looks inside his head. By the end of that issue, I was already a Kyle fan from Ion. That was the book that really started making me kind of get behind Kyle in a way I never have been. But now with this issue, Kyle kicks butt.
Yeah, I want absolute Sinestro Corps. I want everything together. I want Green Lantern Corps, the one-shots, you name it, throw it all in one massive mega thing. I would pay out the nose for that. This is just, and you talk about the one-shots, they are, for me, you don't have to get them. I am so much enjoying this whole event more because of them that, dude, I couldn't imagine not reading them. It really just accents the story, and I loved it.
They're necessary. The Cyborg Superman one, that needed to be an oversized issue. Boy, did we get into his head. And I really liked that because he's a tragic character. It actually added to me 2 storylines, the death and return of Superman, and it added to this, especially with that Death and Return of Superman omnibus being out right now. For some people, that might be the first time they're actually reading that story. And now to be reading that, read this Cyborg Superman special, and then jump over to what's going on in Sinestro Corps, what a cool story that is as far as connecting, because a lot of that delves into what was going on in that Death and Return of Superman storyline. What a great story that Cyborg Superman one was. Did you read that one?
What? The
Cyborg Superman?
Dude, I'm reading them all.
Wait, you want to hear how sick I was? Remember our rant last episode about, releasing them in the small hardcovers?
Yeah.
I pre-ordered the damn hardcover. You know why? And I'll tell you why I changed my tune. Remember my rant a while back about Justice? All 3 hardcovers?
Yeah.
And remember I said I was going to wait till the 3rd hardcover to finish it? I did. I ended up waiting. I ended up finishing Justice in the 3rd hardcover. I didn't end up finishing the rest of the issues. I waited till the 3rd hardcover. The 3rd hardcover came, and I just went through and I read it. So I've got the 3 hardcovers in that, which, it's, again, you're talking about 4 issues each in these hardcovers. I got to tell you, they're beautiful hardcover collections. And Sinestro Corps has a lot more issues in it because, and one of our listeners ranted about this, and they actually sold me on it. It's in one of the show threads or in a listener rant thread, made an excellent point. He said, wasn't the original Sinestro Corps at least a double-sized issue, he's right. And if you take a look at the number of issues that are contained in the first hardcover, it's actually a pretty decent hardcover package. So I ended up grabbing it. So I'm sick. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. That's one. And you know what the sad part is? Like you, I would rebuy this in an absolute.
Yeah.
So it's that good of a series. This is one of the best miniseries I've ever read.
Confession time. I've also pre-ordered the trade. You know? I'm like, I'm not waiting.
It's crazy.
I know. And even if I'll get the full trade, and then it's like a year later or 6 months later, they say, we're doing absolute. Like, oh, okay, I'll pick up both.
I was just complaining last episode, though. I'm like, you know what? I really wish they would have released it in this omnibus edition and all that. I ordered the hardcover.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
But you know what? It's good enough. I know there's going to be extras in there. There's going to be sketch material. You know, with those hardcovers, they throw in extra material in there. So that's going to be worth it for me. It's a good looking, it's going to be on that cool paper. It's going to be a neat looking package. It's one of those miniseries. I did it with Hush. Hush was the last time I did this. Hush, I bought the individual issues. I bought the 2 hardcovers when they came out for Hush, and then I went and bought the Absolute. And you know what? I don't feel cheated at all. I read that series when it came out. I bought all the crazy multi-cover issues because the Jim Lee art was so good looking on those alternate covers that it was worth it. I went and bought the 2 hardcovers, and I read those, and I liked it so much. And then I went and bought the Absolute and read it again. But it's, you know what, Hush is another one of those stories. There's special stories that roll around. Rebirth's another one of those. If they do an Absolute Rebirth, I will buy that.
Yeah. Yeah,
so there's certain stories where it's just like, you know what, if they're going to collect these in formats that really showcase the art and the quality of the story that was put out there, it's worth it to me to purchase that.
Yeah.
So I'm part of the problem.
Oh yeah, dude, me too. And as we're talking about this whole series, the thing I really like about Sinestro Corps is not only that all these titles are interwoven, and it's just a great overall story. If you look at the individual titles, you'll see just personalized story that fits the characters and whatnot of that title. The Green Lantern Corps, it has its highlighted corpsmen that they're dealing with. Green Lantern series, it's got Hal, what he's going through. You put them both together and you have this wonderful story, but even on their own, it's just a fun, wonderful read. That's what a comic should read like. Dude, it's, this is BAM. This is what I want to read. This is an event. This is a happening. This is something that...
You're like the Emerald of this podcast.
What?
BAM! You're like the Emerald of this podcast.
Let's kick it up a
notch. Jim, number 1 from the listeners was JSA Kingdom Come. I remember when Kal-El was the last son of Krypton. Now he's got a cousin, a dog, and 2 multiverse copies inhabiting one universe. Please, please, please. Johns, let these 2 men have a run-in. I know Superman doesn't belong to the JSA, but can you imagine the meeting? Especially if Lois is there. You know it's going to happen. I don't want it yet, though. I don't know about you. Like, I want to see it happen. I'm totally with this comment. I'd like them to right now just kind of delve into his whole story and why he's here and what that means. But enjoy him being in JSA for a bit and have the meeting be something big.
I don't want to see... I want to see it, but I don't. Part of me wants to just keep them separate. Yeah, I agree with you. Keep them separate. Normally, I would be the first one chomping at the bit going, man, I can't wait for this, the two big blues, and it's going to be an epic event. But something, just because it's the JSA, I don't want to see the mixture. I want the JSA to deal with him. I don't want Soup to have to come into the mix. I'd like to see Power Girl deal with the situation and not have to have Clark get involved.
Well, I don't think deal with the situation is the right thing. Are you under the assumption that Superman is not necessarily to deal with the situation? Do you mean that he's not a good guy?
I don't think he is.
Oh, okay. So you think he might be some problems?
I think he's going to cause some problems.
Because at least from the issue where he makes his first appearance, to me it seemed like he was there to help.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just me being the great skeptic that I am, or the pessimistic person, but just something in the back of my head. It's my spidey sense, if you will, my sensei senses, if you want to, just tingling that something just doesn't seem right. They wouldn't bring him back in to have another Kryptonian good guy. They wouldn't bring him. I'm trying to think, like, how did he come back? Why did he come back? Is that really him? Is this all a giant trick being done? There's something else to it.
You think it's not really the Kingdom Come Superman?
I don't know. That's the thing. I'm like,
okay.
I have tons of conspiracy theories running through my head. One, of course, is maybe it's a trick by Darkseid. Two, maybe it is him, but he's turned. Maybe he's being influenced by outside parties. Maybe, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, it's not what it appears to be. It can't be just him coming back, him helping out, him saving the day. We saw that in Infinite Crisis with him and Soup fighting side by side. I got a feeling there's going to be something else. He's not going to be on the good guy's side.
I guess I'm reading too much Kingdom Come into this. His journey in Kingdom Come leads me to believe that we are dealing with a man who's been through the worst of the worst and come out better because of it. So I guess I'm looking at the Superman at the end of Kingdom Come, and I'm seeing that he may be maybe a little harder edged because of the world that he came from, but that, I mean, he's had a relationship with Starman from that world.
Right.
I'm thinking this is going to expand the Starman story more and maybe give us more insight into what's actually happened to him and kind of connect the dots for that character, because he came from that universe. So I'm really curious to see what happens with that. I'm not thinking it's going to be a negative thing, but I think it's going to be an unusual thing.
I hope that is the case. I really do, because I don't want to see him be bad, but I just can't, for some reason, shake the feeling. And it could just be burrito I had for lunch today. I don't know, but there's just something that's just churning in me that says something isn't right here. There's something wrong.
You had a nasty Superman in your burrito for lunch today? I don't see them. I think we're going to see Superman, like you're mentioning, in this whole war for the multiverse.
Yeah.
But the nature of the Kingdom Come Superman, specifically because he's been named as the Kingdom Come Superman, unless you're right that it might be a swerve, I don't know. And I know you're just throwing that out there as one of many possibilities that's running through your head right now. I'm enjoying the ride, so I don't need like a set answer. To me, I see this being, what would be an interesting story for me, just kind of agreeing with the listener who said this, to see him at some point seeing our Clark with Lois and knowing the heartache that he went through with his Lois having died.
Right.
To be able to watch that, what would that be like? I don't know if the Kingdom is still considered in continuity on this, or if this is considered before the Kingdom. But, I mean, yeah, actually, because he and Wonder Woman wound up together, even at the end of Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
So...
and they have a kid, and...
Right, so is this one going to meet up with Wonder Woman, and what would that be like? And it's an interesting possibility. I just don't want to see it right away, because I think that's a story that can be built up to. I like the idea, like you're saying, of his relationship with Power Girl. Both of them are time displaced.
Yeah.
She's from Earth 2. He's from Kingdom Come world. They have something in common. Are they going to bond over that? I like the idea that Starman's one of my favorite JSA'ers. So to see him bond with this Superman and maybe get a little more insight into why he's so wacko would be kind of fun, too. It's a cool story. I'm going to go ahead and kick off top bullets this time around.
Okay.
I've got a little mini rant, and then I'll let you do your number 5. But I want to do a little mini rant before I do my number 5, so I'll let you do your number 5 after I do this little mini rant.
Oh, okay.
Top bullets for me for September. Jim, this was such a tough month. There was so many good books, whether they were crossover related, whether they were just single monthly issues. I really had a tough time because all my favorite books were kicking full thrusters. There were some books that just kind of jumped out at me and surprised me. And that's going to be my theme for this month. There were a lot of books that just made me go, yeah, that's cool. I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming. And that's what my top 5 really focused on, because September was a very surprising month for me on the number of titles that stepped up. And we saw a lot of quality. I want to mention some books that didn't make my top 5, and I had a hard time leaving them out. The first one I want to mention is Superman number 667. Busiek and Pacheco have a really solid Superman title here. I'm just as excited about the Johns and Frank run starting over at Action Comics, but I don't remember the last time that Superman has been this interesting. And it's been a solid book. The bam, ba-bam, ba-bam, issue after issue. The artwork is gorgeous. It's been a fun read. I think it's a book that's been, as listeners have mentioned this sometime, and I totally agree with them, it's kind of overshadowed by Action because of just, the higher name power that's been over there. But it's been a top quality title. All New Adam, number 15. It didn't make my top 5, but it was a great, oh my gosh, was this a great issue. It's still consistently my favorite book. If I had to pick one title right now that is my favorite title that I'm picking up month after month, All New Adam is my number 1 top title. When Gail Simone's first Wonder Woman issue comes out, I definitely want us to do a spotlight on books like Gen 13, that first Wonder Woman issue, and Tranquility. Because I think there's some books that Gail Simone's putting out that are quality titles that just because of the sheer amount of cool books that are coming out, we haven't been able to talk about. But I really want to talk about Tranquility, because that's another book that I'm not able to talk about as much as I want to, and I want to talk about that book because I think it's great. Sinestro Corps and the Crossovers, believe it or not, Jim, did not make my top 5. Now, I'm loving this whole story, and I totally stand behind you with the whole geek out thing. But for me right now, we're midpoint of the war. I'm really digging it. It's extremely high in quality, but there's so much stuff that really just made me go, oh, hell yeah, this month, that I'm kind of like, this is, again, one of the best miniseries I've ever read. Didn't make my top 5. Countdown, same thing. Didn't make my top 5, but it's keeping me glued. It's the first book I read each week. I'm invested in Mary Marvel. I'm invested in the Search for Ray Palmer, the Challengers. The Rogue story is gluing me. I want to talk about the Search for Ray Palmer. That first issue, the Wildstorm one, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
Another book, it didn't make my top 5, but it was hard to leave out because as I was looking through that one, because I looked through so many books, I'm like, what is my top 5 this month? I spent a lot of time on this. When I was looking through that, I want to give a shout out to Alan Pasalacqua. He has, we got a credit for Alan. I don't know if it's his first in DC, but Alan was on there with the colors. And it's really just a great book. I'm a big fan since Worldstorm hit of Wildstorm. So to see our heroes, I read Captain Atom Armageddon, and it was cool to see Captain Atom interacting with the Wildstorm universe. And it actually leads to a lot of what we're seeing with him as Monarch now. Well, now to see these challengers over there, to see Kyle, to see Jason Todd, to see Bob, to see Donna Troy interacting with our Wildstorm heroes. It's a very aggressive universe. It's a very different universe. On the surface, superhero universe, but when you cut right down to it, it's a very different universe that I've been enjoying since the launch. It was neat to see that. It was one of those books that I don't know you needed to read it in order to understand what's going on in Countdown, but it's another one of those that expands the story. If you're liking what's going on with these challengers to the unknown, you need to grab this issue and start reading this book. Both the first and second issue are out, and both of them take place in 2 different universes, and both of them are top quality books. And I can't comment enough about that. Again, didn't make my top 5. I wish I had a top 20 this month. Why don't you go ahead and tell us your number 5, and then I'll do my number 5.
Okay. Well, I tell you, my top 5 really isn't going to surprise anybody who knows me well. If you know me, you'll know. You're like, okay, no biggie. No shockers on my end. Number 5, Booster Gold. Yeah, that's why I chuckled when the listeners said number 5 for them as well. For all the reasons said. First 2 issues, I did 2 speeding bullets. I was so gung-ho to talk about this. This is Quantum Leap. It's a great, great story that is fun and just, it makes you think. Now, they're rewriting history, but they're not altering history, which is something that is really cool for me.
My number 5, Jim, was Countdown to Mystery number 1. I have been so excited for the build to the return of Dr. Fate, and I know because of personal problems, that was the reason why that book didn't get launched and all that. To see that book launching here, it's well worth the wait for me. I'm a huge fan of these anthology-style minis, and this one worked so well. The story has this cool effect where we see the background of the helmet through the new host's eyes, and the new host's life through the helmet eyes. Each gives commentary on the other, so it serves as a great way to connect us not only to the new host, but it also gives us a connection to the helmet and the magic that's going on with that. Fate's magic has changed with this new magic age, and the character looks to be just as mysterious as ever. It's a character I want to delve into. I love the classic costume. The new suit's going to take a little bit of getting used to for me. They did this new outfit. It's definitely got like a flair for the classic, so it's not like so out there that you're like, well, this isn't Dr. Fate anymore. No, it's definitely Dr. Fate, and they kept all the right elements in. It was bam, the new costumes there. Steve Gerber, Justiano, Wong, and Chukri. This is just a great team. They put together a nice-looking package. It's the right amount of creepy, magical mystery. The thing I like the most is whether you've read Day of Vengeance, Helmet of Fate, or not, this book brings you totally up to speed on who Dr. Fate is, what it took to get Dr. Fate where Dr. Fate is right now, how he wound up with the new host, and gives us a little insight to the new host, who hasn't had the best of life experiences either, and is a very real, very human person who has a lot of flaws. And it's going to be interesting to see how this whole series turns out. The cool part about this is it's not just about Dr. Fate. There's this really cool Eclipso backup by Matthew Sturgis. It expands upon the story of Eclipso. We learn the character's connection to some of the major players in Countdown. There's some great moments with the Spectre. My favorite bits in this one, though, involve Plastic Man, where she points out that he is a joke of the JLA, no one respects him, even his son, and she is seeking those with powers who have seeds of doubt and uncertainty. So, and this connects it to very similar to what she's doing to Mary Marvel. She appeals to the former criminal of E.L. O'Brien. The cliffhangers in both are great, and we don't see any resolution of the whole Plastic Man thing. I don't know if we will, but it was interesting to see the characters that she's seeking out to try and influence. She's facing Darkseid. The new Fate is facing some magical nemesis. It's a good starting point for people who want to see more of these characters and see an expanded story. And both of them were, to me, top-notch and very complimentary. I'd recommend them as jumping on points. What was your number 4?
My number 4 was Robin, 167. It's funny, I tossed around. This was almost the first month that Robin almost wasn't in my top 5. And I was trying to convince myself, maybe I'll put something else in here. I was thinking about bumping Booster Gold up and having that JSA, not JSA, the wedding special be number 5, or maybe even throwing in JSA in there. And I was I was trying to figure out what I was going to go with. But as I was trying to convince myself to not include Robin, I convinced myself I had to put it in there. Just because this 167, it's the end of Beecham's run, and they wrapped up a lot of the stories, but they didn't do it so that they closed the book on the characters. Like Dodge, they have an ending to his little adventure with Robin, but there's still going to be more. Now, granted, I wish they would have had a happier ending for him, but, as the saying goes, it ain't over till Amanda Waller sings, so who knows? We may see the kid again. So it's closing the door, but leaving it so open that there can be more, adventures with him. Same thing like with Tim's personal life. One of the things I really digged about Robin was it wasn't just about the superhero. It was about Tim Drake. And just he's trying to leave a normal life, and he has these personal issues trying to balance being Tim Drake and being Robin, and it's not working for him. Well, he's got this great girl, things fall apart, and we see she's moved on. So it's an ending, but they're still leaving more to come.
Wasn't 167 October, though?
I don't think so.
167's not even out yet.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. It's on sale October 24th. It's 166 you're talking about. That's what threw me off. You were saying here's the only reason why I even know that. This is so funny. When you were saying 167, I'm like, what are you talking about? 167's not even out yet, because my number 4 is Robin.
Oops. Well, Robin 166.
Because you're talking about the issue with the tennis opening, right?
Yeah.
Which was so cool, because, that's my buzzword for this book is so totally emotion. I'm with you.
Yeah.
This is Beecham and Williams at their best. It's definitely what I liked about this one. Like you, I totally agree about this book. During the whole tennis match, we see that Tim is out of his element. He started on this whole tennis team thing. His training has not prepared him to play tennis. He's not used to having an opponent or a physical act or something that he can't combat and win. Greg is wiping the floor with him. Not only does he wipe the floor with him, he wipes the floor with him in front of his former girl. His former girl who he doesn't really want to be his former girl. And Zoanne. Zoanne is one of my favorite characters from this run. The relationship between Tim and Zoanne. But Greg, right when they're walking away together, wait, not even to pour salt over the wound, not only did the guy whip his butt, he's dating Zoanne and turns over to him and in front of her does the jock thing and says, make sure you don't trip next time. You know, he didn't mean it that way. He was kind of joking around. Because he obviously, I don't think he knew about the relationship between Tim and Zoanne. But I'm like, that's Tim's girl, man. Back off.
I know.
The moments with Bruce and Tim, dude, they so totally grab me. Because you get the flashbacks to Bruce telling him he will be a hard ass. To the present day where Tim points out that he can balance his life and not hurt his role as Robin. Here's a guy who wants to round himself off so he doesn't fall into this darkness. I mean, this worked on so many levels. We saw what it did to Bruce prior to 52, what it could do to Tim in Titans Tomorrow, and now Tim is learning from both of those. Bruce approves, gives a nod, and even tells Tim that he has qualities that he aspires to. And this is the true definition of a team to me. This is Batman and Robin. Draw off of both members' strengths, learn from each other's weaknesses, human moments that make these two more powerful. When James Robinson did Face to Face, we saw a very different team in these two. We saw a very different relationship in these two. And to see this moment continue on with Beechin and Williams, it just shows that these guys not only understand Tim Drake, but they understand how Tim Drake should react to Bruce Wayne. And that's what I want to see. If you're going to have Batman appear in the issue, make it meaningful. Not just a cameo. Make us go, hell yeah, this added to the story, and this added to Tim. And that was awesome.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. I'm not going to go too crazy into this, but Robin's enemies team up, and you've got Dodge, and basically they know that where he's going to be because of his civilian identity. And dude, how cool was that?
Yeah.
You need to read this. If you guys are not reading Robin, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jim, can't you just pick up this issue and just enjoy it?
Yeah. I think you could probably pick this up. If anything, maybe the issue before it, to get a little bit more of the villains that Robin goes up against. You can see them kind of forming in the issue before this, but you could probably this could be probably a one-shot pickup and enjoy.
Yeah, because really the fight, a lot of it's spelled out within, because the reveals happen throughout the fight, and they give you enough explanation that really realistically, if you weren't reading this, and you pick this up, you got to pick this up for this fight and how it occurs and what's really going on here, because it's just moment after moment after cool moment. And like you said, at the end, it kind of ties up elements of the Dodge story, but leaves you questioning. And it just was an awesome, awesome story. And it was exactly what I expected from Beechin and Williams. And this is what I've loved so much about this run. If you've been reading it all the way through, it's a hell of a payoff. If you haven't been, it's worth picking up this issue to see why you should go get the trades. You got your number 3?
Yeah. My number 3 is the whole Sinestro Corps, Green Lantern Corps, Green Lantern, and part of the reason I was gushing before was just because this is where it is. If I had to break these stuff down in individual stuff, it would be number 5, Green Lantern, number 4, the Sinestro Corps minis, and then number 3, Green Lantern Corps. I gush about this event, and I am so glad that they're not rushing it. There was a lot of talk where they revealed the whole thing with revealing Kyle coming back to the Corps earlier, and they're like, oh, they should have waited, or they should have rushed through the Corps, or done something different. Like, no way, no how. This story, the pacing, the events that are going down, they're happening just perfectly. and I can't gush more about it.
I want to clarify something, too. It's not in my top 5, and not because there's anything wrong with it, not because I want anything different from it. I still think it's one of the greatest miniseries I've ever read in my life, maybe the best. But one of the things for me right now is it's in kind of like that middle part of the war. And I love the pacing. I love where it's at. I love all the crossovers. I'm digging everything about this book. This month there were so many titles that just made me go, this was just a hell yeah month for me. I loved September.
Yeah.
So for me it was just kind of like, what do I choose out of this great quality? And there's so many books that didn't make my top 5 that are my favorite books. They're books that I gravitate towards each month. For me, I don't have a Gail Simone book in my top 5 this month. I love everything she does. I'm reading all of her titles. They're my top of the stack books. They're stuff I gravitate towards right away. That's not an insult to Gail Simone stuff. You guys know how much I gush over her work, how much I adore her stuff, how much I was ready to smack you around when you weren't reading Birds of Prey way back when. But it's one of those, I rebought her Birds of Prey run in trade because it's so damn good. But this month there was so much to pick from. My number 3, Jim, is the Batman Annual number 26. Anything that builds anticipation for a story that I'm already excited about is just so great. The big Batman crossover involving the return of Ra's al Ghul, the story by Milligan and the Lopez team gives some great background into this enigmatic character. And from Ra's first marriage of convenience to learning the immortality for the first time, his obsession with his research causing Sora's misfortune. Each of these stories is surrounded by Damian and Talia's reactions, and I love the more classic Talia feel here, contrasted with the immature nature of Damian. And it's clear that she's using her father's story to try and inspire understanding in her son, but it even gets more ominous as the story goes on and we start to find out what's really going on here that even she doesn't know. How cool is that? This is the character of Talia that I want to see more of. We see Sora's fate that causes a fall into darkness for Ra's al Ghul. The origin of the Demon's Head title. So much more. This story unfolds through multiple stages in time, and I mentioned before that I was digging this in Booster Gold. When we take a look at this here, there's parts during Waterloo versus Napoleon. This works so well because we see Ra's as major events in history are being influenced by him because the outcomes need to fit his overall goals, including the fact that he's got a little side romance going on with Napoleon's girl, which was pretty cool. They even explain why he wouldn't use the Lazarus Pit on his lovers. And this is just, it covered so much ground. The thirst for eternal life, to live forever, to make his mark on a world comes through in this origin story. There's kind of a background story with Batman that makes this whole thing a nice prelude to something larger. And there's this great bit where a man questions the comfort level of Batman because he's in the jungle, in this piping hot jungle wearing his bat suit, and the guy's like, "Aren't you hot?" And Bruce is like, "No, it talks about the construction of the suit really quick and like passing, and then let's move on to more important details." I like tiny details like that because he's wearing this dark suit that just wouldn't, he's not wearing a cool linen outfit.
Yeah.
There's this hidden chamber. There's this character of the loyal servant, the White Ghost. Is Ra's still alive? If you read Death and Maidens, there is a nice setup to this. But you don't need to read that to understand how this is possible for Ra's return. It tells you everything you need in this issue. And it's an excellent prelude for new and old readers. I give this my highest possible recommendation. 2 lines from this. You could have damaged it, and you must be out of your creepy albino head. There is no way I'm putting one foot in that stuff. I can't believe where this story was possibly going to go, where it may go. It is so much, it answered questions about Ra's background, gave me more understanding into the character. If you watched Batman Begins, you're going to see the makings of the character you saw in Batman Begins, because it totally fits for people. Maybe if that's your only exposure to Ra's al Ghul, you could feel very comfortable picking this book up and saying, that's the guy I saw in the movie. It's really, really cool. The ending left me with a lot of assumptions that I think may be wrong. I don't know. It had me hooked. It was great. Did you get a chance to read this, Jim?
I read this right after reading Son of the Demon. So I was really in a Ra's al Ghul kind of mindset when I read this, and I was gushing over. I This was a really cool read. It's got me, chomping at the bit for the return, which is going to happen soon. And I think it's starting in Robin, which is kind of cool. It's going to be a nice crossover throughout all the titles. And once again, another bam thing that's going to happen. So yeah, this was definitely a good way to get get everything going and get you looking forward to it.
This was just a kick butt issue. I love Ra's al Ghul, and it's one of those characters that I'm so excited to see where that's going to go. Jim, what'd you have for number 2?
My number 2 is All New Adam. We raved about this issue. Not only is it a funny story with Panda doing his own version of the Atom and a very special bang stick that he used that I thought was just wonderful, but it is a great setup for what's to come. It's bringing Ray Palmer back into the forefront in the All New Adam storyline. There's a lot of doubt going on. It's unknown what's going to happen. Right now, anything involving Ray Palmer in the DCU is huge news because I think he's going to be one of the pivotal points for whatever the great disaster that is happening, what's going on to what is the final crisis. So the fact that Ray is being heavily featured in Ryan's title, makes me think that Ryan is also going to be at the focal point and at the forefront of some big stuff going on, and I'm looking forward to that.
Jim, my number 2 is Teen Titans number 51. I am so thrilled. McKeever and Garza, the inking team, the colors, this is what I want from the Titans. Big stories, compelling danger. The Luther and Connor moments show how the seeds for the fight to maintain a possible future can happen. Imagine learning your reality will not exist. How would you react? Fear and uncertainty breed rebellion. This is what the Titans is all about. Developing strong heroes and equally compelling villains. The debates between Robin and his future self were so dead on. They are playing with his head, his hopes. He wants to create a successful clone of Connor. And this one claims to be just that. And Bart chimes in that he's one too. And imagine being able to bring back your brothers. And that's what this is in this case. These two, from the Young Justice days, it was the three of them that began the whole thing. And now, he's got an opportunity. Both are dead. Play off of that. And they're your closest friends. Cool, nasty villains. The 6 of us are supposed to replace the Justice League? I'm pretty damn good, but are you high? Ravager is so awesome in this. When they say, we've taken out Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, here you go, you got to deal with Starros. I mean, come on. I mean, what a great moment. Cassie looking at Connor and the Cassie from the future flying together. Her hopes tied into that. One of the great things about Teen Titans is human emotions. Supergirl is the friend who tethers her to reality. Reminds me of what I liked so much about Donna Troy and Starfire. They're building the correct archetypes. What you want to see from a great Titan story. Connor and Cassie talk about her feelings for Tim. And it's interesting to see that even in a future where Connor lived, Tim Drake and Cassie had a little thing. There's a relationship and a bond there. I like that. It's more than just their grief. There is a romantic connection there. And I think that's important to see as their relationship has been continuing. Tim and Tim further developed this concept, and this is a book filled with fantastic action, in the fights with Brimstone, to trying to stop Starro. The humor and the witty dialogue make this a must-read title. It's very human, very sharp. The Titans are in good hands, and I was expecting to enjoy this title. Because I was like, oh, McKeever, he knows how to handle the teen characters. It's going to be a solid title. This went way beyond my expectations. I'm loving the art team on this. This is what I want to see in a great-looking Titans book. There is a cliffhanger that is so Tim Drake at his best, and just, that's all I can say. It's so gush-worthy. If you dropped Titans because you were unhappy for whatever reasons, or you're just kind of like, well, new creative team, I left with the Johns run and that's it, you might want to rethink that and pick up Teen Titans issue 51.
Now, that was your number 2, right?
Yes.
Guess what my number 1 was?
Teen
Titans together, baby. Outstanding. Once again, Titans is back to my top spot. As you're going through, I'm just like, check, check. Everything you gushed about, I was getting ready to gush about. The ending was absolutely outstanding. Just, that is Robin right there. I read that, I'm like, oh my God. Yes! I was thrilled just with reading this. I was so worried about what was going to happen to my Titans. I am so glad that I do not have to worry about the Teen Titans now. All we got to do is just make sure Robin's good to go, and I'll be happy. So,
you know what was so great about that? Those Robin moments there.
Yes.
Tim Drake. All the way throughout the whole issue, you could have taken that character and pasted him right into the Beach and Williams run. It's the same guy.
Yeah.
It always feels like the same guy, and that was so great. Talk about people who took the time to get to know the character. McKeever did his homework, so I'm so excited about this. Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters, Volume 2, Number 1. Gray and Palmiotti should just keep doing this as minis. I love it. Great characters that I gravitate towards. They play a little outside the main universe, but seem to be smack in the middle of it on the underbelly anyways. I would urge you to pick up Battle for Bloodhaven, and especially the Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters trade from before. This is just a fantastic-looking book with great characters. It totally reminds me of what's cool about the JSA. Take classic characters, get to the core of what makes the retro concept cool, but throws them into very today situations. Characters like Firebrand, Red Bee, The Ray, Miss America, Human Bomb, Phantom Lady, Black Condor. I am becoming a big fan of Renato Arlem since OMAC. I was raving about this guy in OMAC. And Rob Schwager sets the mood with the coloring. He does this in Jonah Hex, and he definitely does it here, changing gears a little bit by the setting laid out by Gray and Palmiotti, featuring giant insects. And the sheer peril of these characters, it's just the tone and the mood is set right from the opening pages. It's a very dark, creepy setting, and again, I talk about atmosphere in Jonah Hex. It's so apparent here. This is a good-looking book. Sam's shirt sleeves are torn off, and this is a man's man ready for battle, and he won't stop until the job's done. This is the classic American ideal. Red Bee's inner dialogue so totally wins me over in this. The insects are swarming, and she's using her background with insect studies to hopefully figure out how to communicate with them. She is looking to prove she belongs on this team. I love these types of characters. They are unsure of themselves and accessible, and when they step up, you step up with them. Wow. She goes through some pretty startling changes in her power set during this issue, and it's fun to see her interactions with Dr. Midnight. Insects are the most durable life forms we know of. They exist in places that humans can't. They evolve and adapt faster. If these reach Earth, you can pretty much kiss us all goodbye. Great threats make for great dynamics. Build it up. Make us believe the threat is dire, and we as readers will rally behind our protectors. I was like, yeah, throughout this whole thing. The White House is missing. They return post-Amazon's attack. You don't have to have read Amazon's attack, but it was a cool moment to place this in the time frame of the DC Universe. Imagine being Uncle Sam and returning to a country you were unable to help defend. It's a patriot's nightmare. Sam talks about a storm that is coming, that something ain't right, and it really is the tone of the universe right now. Great to see a man like this pointing this out. The bits where they talk about the role of nature being a role model and members of the shade being in the public eye, any negative move someone makes and people are questioning their place as role models. We're seeing this today throughout the media. It seems more appropriate here when we're talking about government-funded protectors. Ultimately, when they are called upon to act as an almost force to police the people, Sam and some of the members who basically had to kill in Bloodhaven want no part of it without approval from the people. They don't want to step back down that path, and they're afraid this is where it's going to lead them. And this causes a rift in the team. I like this kind of drama because you see real people. They aren't always just going to be drones and go, yes, sir, yes, sir. No, both sides have very strong reasons why they believe they should be doing this, and I like that. At the end, I understand why one team left, why one team stayed, and I'm curious to see how this story is going to unfold. If you're loving the JSA, you should definitely be reading this. It is that good. Solid action, solid character development, great storytelling that has a unique flavor. This is what these guys do best in a very smart read. Great creative team across the board on this book. It was one, again, this month, my top 5 probably surprised some people. Kind of like, what? Where? You left out this book, that book. Great month. Quality month in September. So much good reading. These are books that just made me go, hell yeah, I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting each one of these titles to be good. These are titles that really just grabbed me in September, that made me say, I'm so glad I read this. I'm so glad I picked this up. Very well worth picking it up. So, cool month.
Yeah, definitely a cool month this time. And I gotta agree with you, Uncle Sam was just announced. It was my sleeper. I was looking forward to it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick it up. But I was really just, bam, wow, it did kind of catch me off guard at how cool it really was. And normally I have a rule where I don't like putting limited series in my top 5 just because in a way I kind of see it as unfair advantage, because since it is such a limited and short scope story, it should have more of a boom aspect, and it's easy to get caught up in those. But it's definitely a good read.
Wow, I was so excited to do these because I'm like, I've got so many. I put a lot into this one because this month was usually when we do top bullets, my top 5's already there. I just got to place them in order, if that makes sense. Like, I already know what my top 5 were. It's just a matter of which one's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And there's usually a couple that are tied that I've got to, like, either bump or, because if they're, like, Sinestro Corps related or something like that, or when JLA and JSA was out, they're kind of the same story anyway, so they should be lumped together. In this month, it was really a matter of I had so many books that made me go, wow, this month, that I really had to say, which ones am I going to cut from my list so I can make it just 5? And it was hard to do. And one of the greatest feelings in the world is knowing you had that much good reading in one month. And that's one of the great things about comics right now is month after month, we're getting some really quality stuff. That's why I've said on the show multiple times, if you are reading a book right now that you are thinking is mediocre and you're on a limited budget, there are so many good books out there to grab in the DC universe. Try something else, and really, find those ones that are top of the stack books for you. Because there's so much quality out there right now, and there's a lot of books that really could use support that are just great quality books. If you're not thrilled with your pull list, do yourself a favor and get thrilled with it. Because I can't imagine not, like, every week when I get my comics, and I'm ordering, a lot of books. When those books come, it's to me, wow. It's like a candy store. And I still go to the comic shop, too. So, each week I'm getting an awful lot of stuff. And wow.
Yeah.
Jim, here's what we're going to do. I'm looking at our recording right now, and you and I are about at 1 hour and 12. I have some listener rants that we had from last time that we got to carry over. I'm going to put on this. I'm going to make this a 2-parter. And I'm going to release them very close to each other, so within a few days of each other. Because you and I have a comic timing recording that we are going to be doing. So what we're going to do is right now we're going to go to a listener rant segment. So let's go ahead and do that.
This is from Jedi Nightwing. My rant on the new Titans series. Oh, I wanted the all-new Titans title featuring Nightwing and the others for so long. But I would take anyone, I mean anyone, besides Winnick on this title. Jim, what are you doing, say, for the next 12 months? Sensei sample script for episode 1. Donna, let's look, it's Deathstroke. Beast Boy, what are we going to do? Cyborg, we are going to what-tish his butt. Nightwing, Titans together. It's kind of hard to even comment on that because, let's be honest, it's not out yet, so we haven't even seen what he's going to do. I like the fact that he's going back to the classic team. He's going back to, it's going to be Nightwing, it's going to be Cyborg, it's going to be Donna Troy, Starfire, Beast Boy, Raven. These are the characters that really, when they were talking about Titans East, I had no idea that this was where they were going to be going with this book. And it was a nice little swerve. So I'm excited to see how that comes about and how these characters, because if you think about where these characters are in the universe right now, how do they wind up back together again?
I say it's a rally, because we know that Cyborg is going back to the old Titan Towers to fix it back up from what Slade did to it. in the Titans East Titans East issue in Teen Titans. So he's going to be there fixing the thing up. We know Nightwing's already in New York, so that's the two of them. Then something will happen where they'll need to call for backup, so you call in your friends. So I think that's going to be a really cool, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Winnick writing it. I like Winnick's writing style. I enjoy it. So I'm going to hold off judgment until I read it, but I'm going into it with a positive outlook because, all the stuff he's done. Green Arrow, I loved my Green Arrow. Under the Hood, it's an amazing story. His Outsiders run, I enjoy his style, so it should be good time.
He's batting real well for me as well for just every issue that you mentioned. I mean, Green Arrow, I'm going back and I'm getting all of them in trade because I want them collected. I really enjoyed that whole series, straight all the way through, from Kevin Smith when he started it off to basically what was going on with Brad Meltzer when he had his run on there, straight on through to when Winnick took over. I think Winnick took it and made a Green Arrow family, and it was far more interesting than anything I would have expected it to be. It was a very unique experience, so I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed his stuff. Outsiders, I thought, was very edgy. And I thought when 1 year later hit, we were seeing a Nightwing that we really wanted to see in Outsiders. So, Winnick, I think, especially Nightwing, that's a character where I really liked what Winnick did with Nightwing and Outsiders, so I'm anxious to see what he does with this team. So I would encourage you, if you haven't read the Outsiders run, I think you're going to want to take a look at that run and see what he did there, because that's a great example of what he can do with a team book. And if he does that with Titans, I'm not saying that it's going to be an Outsiders theme, but I'm saying if he does that kind of team dynamic with Titans, that's going to be, I think, phenomenal. This is from Matches Malone. Superman Doomsday is a start in the right direction. Besides all the obvious changes to the story, I think the story they created is somewhat strong. It was great to see something moving towards a Japanese anime-type movie as far as having an adult theme and visuals. Great work with the PG-13 rating. Last thing, what's up with the new character designs? Bad call on the face lines for Superman Mr. Tim. Bad call. And we'll talk more about that later, but I wanted to get his rant on there. Kind of a nice little teaser for what we're going to be doing in the future with it. This is from JD74. I'm going to paraphrase the first paragraph. It's just another one. He's a shout out basically about the lazy rant again, and so we'll move on from that, but thank you for your support. He's got a great little rant here, though. He goes, I heard your views on your reviews of Liberty Bell issue of Justice Society of America. Let me just say that Liberty Bell is my favorite DC character. She's up there with my favorite female character overall. I love what Johns did with her as Jessie Quick, and I loved her on the Titans. I think she sums up everything about the DC Universe. Legacy, the daughter of two Golden Age superheroes. She's taken on the identity of both of her parents at one time or another, and now she seems like she has both of their powers, even though she's now taken on the Liberty Bell identity. She's also quite the thinker and the student of the superhero. To me, she's the total package when it comes to what a hero is, and I think she's great. Sinestro Corps. Great, googly moogly. This is just amazing. I just read the latest issue of Green Lantern, and I cannot believe how it all went down. Some more of the Lost Lanterns died against the Anti-Monitor. Sayid and Gant had kicked off the Council of the Guardians. The Guardians rewriting the Book of Oa to allow lethal force. Holy! Then, with the Sinestro Corps fooling the Guardians, thinking that they were going to attack Oa, and instead they were after Earth. This series is just so kick-ass, and I cannot wait for future installments of this fantastic storyline. I read the Parallax one-shot with Kyle, and that was just amazing. I will always be a Hal fan, but with this issue, it brought a whole new level of respect for Kyle. I feel that with this issue, I just feel he's going to be okay and come out safe. I think maybe he'll come back as a Green Lantern or something involved with the Green Lantern Corps books. Maybe get his own series or something. I just see Kyle in a whole new light with this one-shot and cannot wait for the other Sinestro Corps one-shots. And that one-shot for me was incredibly pivotal as far as I agree with what he's saying in the sense that I think it explains Kyle to people who maybe haven't got him. And I consider myself one of those people. I enjoyed Kyle, but I've never really been a diehard Kyle fan. Now, I'm getting one-shots like this and seeing what they're doing with him in this big event, and there really is an explanation of who this character is, why people care about him, and I'm glad to see, it's one of the cool things right now, that he's going to come out of this okay, and we're going to see him, I think I'm going to see him in a very different light now. That's been the cool part of this experience.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. That was a really neat read, but the one thing I'm wondering with the Sinestro Corps not going after Oa, going after Earth. Earth is stacked with other superheroes, and you're going to do an invasion of it. why would you do? Why wouldn't they go after Oa? Why wouldn't they continue their battle that way? There's got to be something more to this story than just that. They're working. Are they working with Darkseid? Maybe this is the first wave to soften up Earth, and that's all the Sinestro Corps is cannon fire. These are thoughts that are just running through my head, and it's, that's one of the things I like about these events and these things that are crossing throughout the DC universe. So I'm excited.
This is an interesting one. This is from Vinylhead. I'm sorry, Sean, but I in no way believe that when Brad Meltzer conceived and wrote Identity Crisis, it was meant to be the first part of a trilogy of Crisis events that'll end with Final Crisis. I'm not even sure that Jeff Johns was aware that Infinite Crisis was the second part of this supposed trilogy. Obviously, John used plot threads from Identity Crisis in his series, and I'm sure Grant Morrison will use ideas from Identity and Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis. But the idea that this is always going to be a trilogy reeks of DC attempting to retcon the whole thing into being something grander than it was originally conceived to be. Please don't take offense. It just is the way I see things. Let me say that I loved Identity Crisis, thoroughly enjoyed Infinite Crisis, and I'm sure Final Crisis will not disappoint. Perhaps I'm getting too pessimistic about DC's motives. I've had to make the hard decision after Final Crisis ends. I'm taking a break from DC's events for a while. The sad thing is, I think the DC Universe has never been so exciting. And I've loved the ride through OMAC Project, Villains United, 52, Countdown, Amazon's Attack, etc. Unfortunately, financially, this means I've had to drop many other companies' books, and my collecting has become less diverse in its scope. I will still be picking up a large number of DC titles, but for a while, crossover events will have to take place without me. At least Sean and Jim will keep me up to speed with what's moving and shaking in the extended DC universe. Bless the pair of you. P.S. I had made the assumption that Kyle Rayner in Countdown was from one of the other 51 Earths and not from the regular DC Earth. If this is the Kyle, I'm surprised and a tad peeved that one of the plot threads from Sinestro Corps has been spoiled. All right, let's just go back and address the controversy here. My personal... they haven't revealed how this whole process went, but they've been talking for years now how they've got a game plan for years for the DC Universe. This isn't something that they just threw together now, well before Infinite Crisis even came out. And you got to remember, Infinite Crisis led to 52, led to 1 year later events, led to... I don't know how we can't see this as being a framework of some sort. That doesn't mean that they necessarily nailed down every single little storyline that was going on. My personal feeling is there's one of two things that happened. They either planned this before Identity Crisis came out, or due to the success of Identity Crisis, they took the loose threads from there and said, what can we do now? How can we build on the success of this storyline? And that led to the two other books that became part of the trilogy of events. I don't know. Either way, it's a smart business decision on their part. They're saying, we've got this buzz book. Let's shake things up, get the industry going. My personal thought is, before Identity Crisis came out, they had a summit, met together, and said, what are we going to do for the next couple years in the universe? And they got together with these writers. They either did that before Identity Crisis or afterwards. I don't know. I don't really care. But you don't have to apologize to me for it. I mean, you're entitled to have your own opinion on it. I just don't see, from a company standpoint, what do they have to lie about? They don't have to say anything about how they planned this. They just have to put the books out. So I don't get the whole conspiracy theory on this thing, mainly because I don't see what they gain either way. They could just say nothing. I'm not any more excited to read Final Crisis because it's part of a trilogy or not. I'm excited to read it because they've decided in sequential storytelling that at the end of this whole thing, they've got a Final Crisis and it's being planned. They have multiple writers who are involved with this whole process, so they each crafted their own story. But by the same token, one of the big criticisms on Infinite Crisis has been that in many people's eyes, there wasn't a definitive ending. I thought there was of that particular arc. But like when we talked about Amazon's Attack, there are threads that still continued. We've got Superman Prime, which I can't help but wonder if Jeff Johns left that kid there available because he had planned all along to do something with them in Sinestro Corps. The multiverse was kicked off at the end of 52. So that was a plan after the 52 weeks were done. The multiverse is back. The multiverse is now back, but it's still in a state of flux. That leads to Countdown. Countdown's now building to deal with that. We've got these monitors back. This came from Brave New World, the one-shot. I don't know how you can't think all this stuff was crafted together because it's too well laid out timeline-wise. They aren't just randomly thrown in there. These things are being strategically placed. To the point where they're doing things like telling us about Kyle because they need to keep that timeline moving. They can't afford a 2-month gap in between because there's a goal. There is an end result. As far as and I talked about earlier on that I wanted to talk about how I would drop my own titles and cut them down. You've got to take a look at your budget, and you got to say to yourself, what is my priority? How much am I enjoying? What are my top tier titles? It sounds like you're getting frustrated and the conspiracy theories coming in because you're stressed over the amount of books you're pulling. Now, for me, I'm very fortunate right now that I can have the kind of pull list that I do. That may not always be the case. If I had to cut my books down to top 5, I could. And I'm coming from the standpoint of somebody who's enjoying so much. For right now, my top 5 would be quite easily, number 1 on my list would be All New Adam right now. Month after month, I'm just enjoying that book. It makes me smile. It makes me laugh. I think there's a lot of action. The art's fantastic. It's got humor that applies to me with the various references in there. The second book is JSA. I couldn't drop JSA in a million years. JSA I've had a love for since the end of Starman. That was a book that it started up actually while, I'm almost positive started up while Starman was still continuing on, if I'm remembering correctly when I went back. That created my love for Hawkman. It's a book whose characters, their family feel, their society feel, it's a book I would never drop in a million years. Number 3 for me, Grant Morrison's Batman. I am so geeked out over Batman in that book with the continuing threads of that book, I would not drop Grant Morrison's Batman. Number 4 for me would be Teen Titans. I just love that whole team. I love the whole layout. I'm really excited with issue number 50 with where Sean McKeever's going with this new team. The dynamic and the characters, I've always enjoyed Teen Titans. My 5th book is a little bit tricky because I was trying to think about what book would I pick for number 5 if I had to go to just 5 books. And it was not the easiest thing in the world. For number 5, I'm going to have to go with Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is a group of characters who I've just grown to love so much so. I love Barbara Gordon, Huntress, Lady Blackhawk, Misfit. They were so laid out by Chuck Dixon in his run, right on through to the phenomenal run by Gail Simone that I am going to follow and see what Sean McKeever's doing. That would be my 5 books. It would be very painful for me to cut down to 5 books right now because I am enjoying so much else. And it's not in any way a slap to the face to every other books. It's just, if I had to make a budget of only 5 books, that's what it would be. And you'll notice a lot of omissions there, and not one of them are event-driven. Those are the books that I'm just really enjoying right now. That's what I would do. I'm not saying you have to go do this now, Jim. I'm just saying I think it's even more important that I'm the one that does this that fast because I think it's to show people that, yeah, while I do love my comics, I'm a fan of this. But I do have a hierarchy here, and there are certain books that do mean something to me to that point. I think what we're trying to do at the show is show people, though, have a good time with this. If you're getting stressed, dude, find a way to get unstressed. This hobby's too doggone fun. And it sounds like you're just getting, when you said pessimistic, I think what it is you're getting stressed for some reason. I don't know, from your rant, it sounds like your budget is stressing you out. If that's the case, fix it. And I'm saying that just truly, I mean that as a friend. You wrote this wonderful rant, and it sounds like you're having fun with your reading, but you're getting stressed out over things that are outside of your reading. And if something outside of your reading is stressing you out, find a way to fix that so you're enjoying your reading again. And that would be my best piece of advice to anybody out there. Find a way to enjoy this again because this hobby's too damn fun. And if it means picking up 1 book each month, make sure it's the 1 book that's going to make it worth you picking up each month. And don't be stressed out over this, dude. Have a good time. That's what comics are all about. That's what our podcast is all about. To me, this is a fantastic hobby. I like sharing that. And, it's totally my view on this whole thing. So I don't know if you got anything you want to add. Or
when Sean started reading this rant is when I started trying to break it down to 5 titles. Now, you all know how I am with just picking 5. It's usually like 7, 8 to 10, but I actually have 5 titles. First, of course, out of the block, it's got to be Robin. I can't not have Robin. 2, All New Adam. 3, everything else. No. 3, Stormwatch PhD. It's a real fun title, and I'm like, I would need something outside of the DCU to throw in there. I was going to go with Gen 13, but I'm like, which I dig, but I'm like, I'm just going to go something else, just a nice variety there. 4, and here's where the toughie comes in. I'm going to go with Titans. Just even though I have Robin already, I dig the Titans format. I dig what they're about, and that's that. And then 5, Green Lantern Corps. because I really dig the concept of the Green Lantern Corps. So there's my 5.
It's really hard to do, isn't it, though? Because I'm like sitting here, even as I'm listing my 5, I'm like, oh my God, that would be painful. Because that would mean I don't get to try Wonder Woman. And I am so psyched for Wonder Woman. But, I mean, that's if, and I'm looking at right now, if I had to make the sacrifices and make out a budget, that would be my current budget. And that would be, if I had to stick to 5 titles, that's how I would do it. And I do stand behind that. It would be a very painful budget for me because I am having so much fun right now. And like, as I'm saying it, I'm like, I'm not even really doing this. And I'm like getting depressed because I have to cut this up. So I guess I would say, though, you know, you got to weigh out, like, hey, if I cut and make some cuts to my budget, is this going to make me enjoy this more? And if it is, do it. Do it. Have fun. And don't apologize to me. I don't work for DC. I don't make any money off of DC. They take my money. But I seriously, I feel bad when I hear people having stressful rants because I'm enjoying this so much that I want you to get that enjoyment. So hopefully one of our goals of this show is to help you enjoy comics more, and I'm hoping maybe this little rant from us maybe helps you kind of find a way, like, come up with a title amount. Come up with a dollar amount each month and stick into that. And, you know, what you can't get, you can't get. Honestly, with any event that goes on, the realistic reality is we act like we have to read every single little piece of every little event. We're all intelligent people. You can really figure it out. Let's be totally honest. As kids growing up, you know, there were events going on when I was a kid. The years went on, the events started kicking in after Secret Wars and all that stuff. You know, we started seeing more and more events with huge crossovers and all that. Realistically, though, I couldn't follow every event. So if my monthly title crossed over, the writers are pretty good. Case in point, All New Adam kind of told you all you really need to know what Adam's role was in Countdown. That's really all you need to know. He was off for a little bit with Jason Todd and Donna Troy, and they were searching for the Atom. He's now been pulled out of that, and he's back in his own book having his own adventures. Kyle's back, and he's a replacement for him. Done. Go. Off. Keep reading All New Adam. To me, I think your better authors are doing that. You know, where they're giving you these placeholders and just saying, hey, this is what's going on right now. If you can't read this, this is how it fits with All New Adam. Done. Move on. So I think we got to start looking at it that way for people who are getting stressed out over their budget. Enjoy this hobby. It's phenomenal. It's great. And make sure you're enjoying those issues. And that's kind of where I'm at on it. Hey, everybody. A little bit of a crazy thing going on here. You know, obviously with the fact that my hard drive crashed, Jim and I had to scramble and get an episode together. One of the things we hadn't done was top bullets, so that was a perfect opportunity for us to say, let's get our top 5 of the month and get them out there. I also had that listener rant discussion that we needed to finish off from CGS 300. Because that was a iRiver recording and this was a Skype recording, there is a little bit of a sound quality different than probably what you're used to with us usually, and please excuse that. We're also experimenting with the Skype recording on this one and the other part that's going to be released on Sunday or Monday. We are experimenting with Jim using his headset versus the telephone. We did both on the second part, just for me to have a comparison as far as which one sound quality-wise is stronger so we get the best from Jim. We prefer to do in-studio recordings, which is a majority of what we do here. Whenever we have a guest on, such as Art Lyon, that we're going to be having on, we do that here, where Jim's here and then Art Lyon would be over Skype. So that way we don't have quite as many people over Skype and we've got, you know, the strong sound end. In this case, because of the time crunch, we needed to do a Skype recording with Jim and myself. So I definitely welcome your comments on this, especially on the second part with the comparison. The first half is on with Jim on the headset, and the second half is going to be with Jim on the telephone. Which one do you think is better? And that's going to be Sunday, the Monday release. Just to give us your thoughts on it. I like I said, I prefer it always to be here. It's not always possible with Jim's new job schedule and my job schedule. You know, there's times where I have meetings after school, and Jim's been testing new software at work. Because of those schedule differences between the two of us, it's not always possible for us to do a recording together in person. So we sometimes have to make these sacrifices where it's a sound quality change, but for the purpose of getting you the content. And hopefully the content's more important than the sound quality on these particular issues. Anyway, like I said, we're going to be back Sunday or Monday. What I did do on the end of this one, we had a request in the Ask Dr. Norge thread for the Nightwing Annual discussion that we did. This is like lost footage that I've had for quite some time. It's a discussion that's really out of date, and it's one of the reasons why we haven't done anything with it. I'm mostly happy with this discussion. I'm kind of picky about the show, so there's certain times where there's segments that we've recorded that I'm not as thrilled with. I don't know if I'm being too harsh on it or not. So what I decided to do with this one was, seeing as this is like an hour and 20-minute show, this would be a great time to put it on as bonus footage. I'm not going to have time to edit this one, and this is kind of a show first, so it really is like DVD extra footage. If you want to abandon the show at this point, this is really going to be the rest of the polished episode. The rest of what you're going to be getting is a chance to kind of see what our raw footage looks like. And I don't remember if this one was a particularly good recording, because sometimes we have ones where it's very minor editing for me. Sometimes we have ones where it's major editing for me, so this is kind of a look at what Raging Bullets is like uncut. And it'll probably give you a good idea on why we need to edit. But it might be fun for some longtime listeners to hear it. I think there was some strong points in this discussion because we didn't just talk about the Nightwing Annual. We talked about the annual format in general and how we feel about it. The clock's in at about an hour and a half. And I don't know if I'm going to keep the whole hour and a half on there. I am going to listen to the whole thing through just to make sure that I'm keeping just the annual discussion and that we didn't get off on some really super crazy tangents that really at this point don't belong. Maybe they were good tangents, or maybe they were at least linked enough that they were worth keeping. I don't remember what was in this hour and a half of footage, so I'm just going to listen to it, I think, just because I want to know what am I putting out there. But I'm not going to edit this one, and it's a choice just because of time. So I hope you'll forgive that. It's just a matter of this is bonus footage, like I said. So you're basically winding up with a 3-hour episode out of an hour and a half episode, and have some fun with this bonus footage. And thanks a lot for your patience this week. Everyone's been really supportive. It's very frustrating when you do a weekly podcast, and Jim and I have been overall I think we've been very consistent in putting out a weekly release to you guys, which is really hard when you've got 2 full-time jobs and you're doing that. But it is something that's important to us. We know you guys are here every week to listen to it, and we appreciate you supporting us. So we want to support you by having the content out. And it's been one disaster after another this week on it. But I'm glad we got this one out because I really enjoyed the top bullets discussion, and I hope you guys got that out of it too. And that listener rant one that was from CGS 300, probably my most exciting one because I finally got to show, I really could cut down my budget if I had to. I don't want to, though. I'm still feeling this. When I was listening to it back to edit it, I was still feeling the sting from it because I'm like, I don't want to do that, though. But I could, and it's one of those things that you almost have to do at that point. So, anyway, thank you all again, and our closing sponsor segment is going to be on the next part of this, because this really is a split episode. We haven't done this in a long, long time. We used to actually split the episode right down the middle. We had a couple episodes where we did that way, way back in the past, and we decided to do this time because of the time crunch. So you will actually be getting the second part of our 96th recording, which is what this is. We'll call it 51 Part C, but it will actually be the second part of this recording. We're going to be talking Countdown, and also on the episode, we have a BK's Bullets that Brent sent in about Amazon's attack. And not only does he talk about Amazon's attack, he talks about some of the Wonder Woman fallout afterwards in her own book. So we're going to continue. This will be kind of like a wrap-up discussion on Amazon's attack. Brent has a very strong opinion one way. Jim and I have a very strong opinion another way. And I think it's an interesting discussion. And it'll be kind of our closing commentary on that particular event as we move on to something else. So that'll be on that episode as well, or that portion of this episode, I should say, as well. So you're going to be getting that, like I said, Sunday or Monday, depending on Sweetest Day. Got to keep the wife happy, otherwise there's no show. And we'll see you then.
Bye.
Holy caffeine.
Jim, real quick before we wrap this up, let's have a discussion about the annual format. We've seen the release of annuals since the Batman annual that ended off the Under the Hood storyline. The annual's been used as kind of a closing of a storyline, or even a launching into the next storyline. The Batman one, it really kind of closed off Under the Hood, but also tied it directly into the events of Infinite Crisis by showing Superboy punching through the crystals was what brought Jason Todd back. You got the Teen Titans annual, which was clearly a setup to the events for him in Infinite Crisis, expanding and actually making a more sympathetic character out of Superboy Connor Kent and what was going to ultimately happen to him in Infinite Crisis. Now we've got things like the Nightwing Annual. Prior to 52, we saw Dick Grayson propose to Barbara Gordon. We never knew what happened with all that, and we find it out in the Nightwing Annual, which is written by Mark Andreyko. What were your overall thoughts on the Nightwing Annual, Jim? I mean, here you got a storyline that in the Nightwing Annual, it took Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon went back to the beginning of their relationship and kind of gave us some private moments between the two, some of which we saw on camera, but even expands upon those with conversations that the two had. And we got to see their whole relationship throughout the years. In many ways, at the end of it, the payoff for me was, I want to see these two back together someday.
Dude, I absolutely loved the Nightwing Annual. And I think it was, one, just a wonderfully written story. But two, as you said, it actually makes me want to learn more about the characters, makes me want to see their budding relationship, makes me want to pull up these, get the Batgirl, what's the...
Showcase Batgirl?
Thank you. Wants me to get the Showcase Batgirl so I could actually see their interaction and everything. I tell you, it was just a really cool story and one of the things it had in there that I absolutely cheered when I read it was they actually explained why he wore that dorky outfit beyond the fact that he was just the bright light compared to Batman's darkness. It was just a cool explanation as to why this actually, maturing kid would still wear that, the little funky boots and the shorts and all that. I always hated that costume. I really hated that costume, and so great explanation in there.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about this is Mark Andreyko with the Ma Kent storyline from Superman Returns. It's so funny. It was this one-shots tie-in to a movie, which wasn't supposed to be much of anything. And that's no insult. It's just, let's be honest, movie tie-in comics, you don't expect a whole lot out of them. That was such a heartwarming issue. It's, to me, one of my all-time favorite comics as far as emotional response. I actually teared up reading that particular storyline. I thought it was very well written. He has a great way of showing emotional attachment between characters, and he nailed it with Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. And Joe Bennett on the art was fabulous. I'm looking at some comments from Modern Lover. This was well worth the wait. It made me not worry about the future of Dick and Babs, and it brought me much joy. And Draco handled the storylines with trademark skill, and Bennett and Jason knocked the art out of the park. I'm a sucker for romance, and this pushed all the right buttons. And it didn't hurt that the characters are two of my favorites. I can't wait to see this play out soon, hopefully in Birds of Prey, since Nightwing is heading for a retro storyline, and I think McKeever is the best person to write it. This is what an annual should be. And I'm hoping we do see Dick and Barbara get back together. I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. I think they're still, right now they're busy with playing with reestablishing who Nightwing is. And I think they're doing a great job of that. I like that. The retro storyline that we're talking about actually it takes place in modern day. They're just using some flashback sequences to tie it in to modern day. They're using like a lost year in Dick Grayson's life, the time between when he left Batman and joined the Teen Titans. And it's nice to kind of see them using something that really wasn't ever told in the past as a way to make an interesting story today as well, because I like the modern storyline in there and the bringing back the girl from the past and how she looks like she's going to be a little bit of trouble, and it's an interesting storyline in there. I want to see this pay off eventually, though, and it's only because I care so much. Here's the problem, though. It's the problem with comic book relationships. Like, I would love to see Dick and Barbara get married, but there comes a point in time, you can't marry off everybody in the universe, so you got to pick and choose. Ollie and Dinah, I never saw coming. But, can you marry Dick and Barbara off? I don't know. Or is there ultimately going to be something that keeps the two of them apart? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think you can eventually marry off Dick and Barbara?
I would love to see that. I think that would be a really cool, story arc, and just a great way to continue on the development of the character. But if you think about it, they can't do it because you can't really, age and grow and develop the characters. They'll always be stuck in that newlywed phase, and that's why I'm an advocate for the aging superheroes. But I'm not.
You can't do it with. Here's the thing, though. Okay.
I know you can't do it because you got to have Batman, you got to have Superman, you got to have Wonder Woman around. I understand that, and I completely respect and agree with the opinions that, yes, you do need to have Batman, you do need to have Bruce Wayne, you do need to have, Superman and just everybody, but part of me still wants to see it. And this is the exact Barbara Gordon and, Dick Grayson is the exact reason why I want to see these characters grow older. I want to see, I want to see Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon's kid, assume the mantle of Nightwing. I want to see, have like Tim Drake as Batman and, Dick Grayson's kid as his Robin. I want to see that. I think that would be just the coolest story in the world for me. And it's never going to happen, but
here's the problem when you do that. When I was reading All Flash #1, it dawned on me. I'm like, why does it bother me so much to see those characters get married? You've got right now Superman married to Lois Lane. I love that. I think it's great. I think writers are getting creative and finding ways to make that relationship work. Take a look what Donner and Johns did by bringing Christopher in, and the problems that it made for Lois and Clark. Lois, very independent woman, wasn't even for this whole thing. And you would, think her being a female in the traditional sense, you would think that she would be the one that would gravitate most towards being a mother. I'm not saying that to be sexist in any way. I'm just saying traditionally that's how women are written. Like they would go towards that. Well, ultimately what happens is she's the one putting up the roadblock. Clark is the one that wants to be the dad. He wants that part of Krypton with him. And it throughout the issue, Lois develops a fondness for Christopher, and that is ultimately what makes her say we'll give it a shot because of her attachment to the kid. And actually, it was all the more interesting a storyline the way they did it. But here's the problem. If you're doing similar storylines in Batman, then you do similar storylines in Wonder Woman, what is the distinction between the characters in their books? Batman's a little darker edge to him. You got the billionaire playboy running around, and the storyline he's got going on with this girl that Morrison's doing right now is really cool, and it's something that you could, you're not going to tell that book with Clark Kent. You're not going to tell that storyline with Clark Kent. It just wouldn't work with him. It works with Bruce Wayne. And if you marry him off, you take away that dynamic. I was rooting in Hush for him to get together with Selena Kyle. It crushed me at the end of Hush when they didn't. But then, by the same token, it crushed me when he broke up with Sasha Bordeaux. When this relationship with this girl ends, it's going to crush me because I like her. With a good Batman story always shows the promise of that possible future for him, but the tragedy of Batman is that there's something that's always going to get in the way of that. And that's what makes these stories so compelling with Batman. The promise of Clark Kent is that he's the good guy farm boy, and you know that whatever tragedy he and Lois befall, no matter what comes between them, and we've seen things throughout their run come between their marriage, where they've had some very rough spots, and points in time where she wanted him to stay human when he started getting his powers back. You could tell from looking at her that, I kind of like him being just Clark Kent. I'm getting used to this kind of lifestyle. And that's what makes their relationship so compelling, is that you see him trying to fit Superman into that world. I don't know that I want to see that in every book, though. Wally West has 2 kids right now. We're seeing that they, too, have grown up. And we don't know where Wally was all that time. And there's still that hint at where was Wally and what happened. All Flash cleared up a lot of questions I had about how long had Wally been riding the Lightning. Well, not as long as we thought. And what's going to be interesting is we've got some mysteries for Wally West that we still have to figure out with him and his family. And also, he talks about how his kids have got something special about them. We're going to be finding that out in that book. And that, to me, is very intriguing. I wouldn't want to see that in every book, though. We're already getting that fix in Wally West's book right now. Ollie and Dinah, what's going to be interesting about the two of them being together is that she's still marrying Ollie Queen. And, the great part about their relationship is going to be as reformed as Ollie is, even if he stays the way that he is, he's got a tremendous amount of history that is obviously could be pulled into that book and cause all kinds of turmoil. And it's going to make for that to be a very roller coaster relationship that is going to be compelling because of all the things you can. There's opportunities in that book to do something with that marriage that you're not doing with Superman, that you're not doing with Wally West over in his book. And that's why, when I looked at that, I'm like, why would they marry those two off? Well, because Ollie Queen is going to be a pain in the butt to be married to. And if they play off of that the right way, even if he is totally as reformed as they've been showing in his own book, it's his past that is ultimately going to make it a really annoying marriage for Dinah. And that to me is what's going to make that a compelling book. I understand what you're saying with the aging thing. But it was really, it clicked together for me when I read All Flash. I'm like, they're already doing this with this particular couple right here. Do we need to do that in every single DC book? Is it a good thing to do that? What happens when they're all married? You know, do you want every single superhero married and moving on with their life and aging in that respect? I don't know. I think I'm getting something specific from Tim Drake's book right now because it's Tim Drake doing what Tim Drake does in that book. And I don't know that I necessarily want to see Bruce Wayne get married and move Tim Drake into the Batman role. Then is Bruce Wayne anywhere near as interesting of a character that I want to read if every book is the same now, with all of them married, all of them having kids, all of these characters aging in this respect? I think we're seeing some of that right now in Flash. I don't know that I want it in all those books.
See, we're not going to see every character get married. We're not going to see every character have kids. We're going to see everybody's different, and like with Bruce Wayne, he may never get married. He may retire as being the Bat because he physically is unable to do it. He takes a huge beating because, one, he is a normal human who is going up against metas. Maybe he's finally going to have his event where he's going to have another Bane where his back's broken and he doesn't recover from it. Or he may, the mantle of the Bat may be passed on to Tim because he's dead.
But the truth is,
I just want to see some. I want to see some change in the characters. I want to see them grow older. I want to see this. I want to see the next generation of heroes pop up from.
They've tried that. They have tried that, and it's been unsuccessful. They tried that with Green Arrow. They tried to replace him with his son. They tried that with Green Lantern. They tried to replace him. When you do that with these characters, ultimately people demand back the classic in that role.
See, here's the thing.
They've done this with Thor. They've done this with, where they've replaced Thor with a different person. I mean, anytime they do these types of things, people demand back that classic character.
Okay.
And sales have shown that when you bring back that classic character in the role, the book skyrockets.
Here's the thing, though. If everybody across the board is aging, if everybody across the board is going through the same thing where there's going to be the next role to pop in. I don't think it'll be as a big of an event, or it will affect them as much as long as, all these characters are going through it. If you have Batman, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Superman, and Connor Hawk, Green Arrow, that's what makes Connor Hawk stand out and people not like him. If you have, Chris Kent as Superman, Tim Drake as Batman, and Connor Hawk as Green Arrow, all three of them are younger, newer characters that are going into the role. All three of them will have a commitment and a latch onto. You need to do it across the board.
You want every book in the universe to have an elderly mentor with a new replacement in it.
Not necessarily, but you see the development and the change to it. Superman, in all honesty, Superman could be immortal because of everything with him being a Kryptonian. And same thing with Wonder Woman. Those two could never age, and it wouldn't make sense to me, and I wouldn't question it. But,
So you would take then Batman, Green Lantern, you would take Flash, you would take Nightwing, you would take Robin, you would take, where do you stop?
I would. You keep mentioning.
And how do you here's the problem: a new reader comes on board, And they come into the universe and they're like, well, that's great. DC's got every book where either somebody's really old and they're still running around in their costume, or they got a really old guy who's got a new guy replacing them in their book. It just, I guess to me,
you wouldn't. It's not like, well, one, it wouldn't be a sudden change. You know, this is a gradual thing that's developing. I'm talking, 20, 30 years down the line. But it would be something that as it's flowing, you would like, okay, it makes sense now. And like for when Tim puts on the mantle, it would be at an event. It would be after something significant where you're like, okay, they're setting up. It's time to pass the torch. This is this is what's going on here. Instead of those points in time when they retcon stuff and they go back, okay, let's redo what we talked about. Let's modernize the story for the current environment going on in the world. They don't need to retcon. They just continue on with the story.
I got to be honest with you. I prefer when they retcon. To that.
And there's a lot of people, and I completely understand, what you and probably, I'm going to guess 99% of the people listening to this podcast are probably 100% agreement with you. But this is just what I would like to see. This is, and I know, and that's why I say I know it'll never happen. But just for me, that's something I would like to see. And reading this Nightwing Annual, really was just one of those things that just brought this out of me, because I see this young relationship. I see it kind of the current development that it is now, and I know it'll never go beyond that. It will always reach a stopping point because they can't age the characters, because they can't develop who they are.
But see, that's just it. When I pick up Batman, I want to read Bruce Wayne, not Tim Drake. I really don't want to read... I like Tim Drake, don't get me wrong. I don't want to read Dick Grayson as Batman. I like storylines like they did Prodigal, where Dick Grayson took over. That storyline was amazing. I really enjoyed it, but I was glad when it ended and Bruce came back and reclaimed the mantle. Night Quest, when Asbats... And I mean, you knew at the beginning of Night Quest that was not going to last. But when Asbats was taking over, I ultimately wanted the moments. I was more interested in the stuff going on with Bruce Wayne trying to walk again and trying to find Tim Drake's family and the stuff that was going on with that than I was in what was going on with Azrael. Because I ultimately wanted to see Bruce back where he belonged. I was following the guy that I want to get behind. I love Tim Drake. I'm totally with you. I love Tim Drake as Robin. I would be glad to read another 20, 30 years of Tim Drake as Robin, because I think he's just a fantastic character. And I know that means at some point in time for it to make sense, you're going to have to retcon, but you almost have to do that just to modernize the characters so they fit in today. One of the joys of reading the Silver Age stuff is it's like you're going back into an era in the past where that stuff made sense. And the way it was written made sense for that particular era. And they're fun books for that time. Do I want to see that type of storytelling today? Not really, no, because it's fun to read in the showcase books. It was already done and done so well back then. Leave that where it belongs, and today let's tell a story that makes sense today. And this story with Dick and Barbara read so much like a story that made sense today, because relationships today aren't so clean and cookie cutter. With so many, how many of us have so many different issues that ultimately we need to resolve either with or before we get together with somebody? And I'm married. I got plenty of issues. Trust me, you're with me all the time. But I totally ate up this annual because of the fact that the relationship between Dick and Barbara was so romantic leading up to it, and I could relate to that from the relationship with my wife. It didn't go real smooth. The relationship with my wife, there were points and times where she put me through the ringer, and in a good way, where you look back at those things fondly. And I was eating this annual up as I read it, because it read like a real today relationship. And when you saw the two kind of walk away at the end, I'm kind of like, it was just a great story. And You see Dick go off for the reasons that he needs to. You see Barbara go off for those reasons. I would love to see the two of them get back together. I think right now we're going to see in Dick Grayson's book other relationships be developed. I think we're going to see Barbara develop another relationship. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll put those two back together. I right now don't see that happening because I see them being apart and developing these interesting relationships being apart because of where they've been before. They've already done that. They've already put them together. I think they're going to try something new with them. And it's bittersweet because of this issue for me. And it's...
Wow, we went off on a tangent.
Well, we did, but I mean, it totally fits this because we're looking at where do we want these characters to go. Do we want to see Dick and Barbara get married? And I don't know that I do. You know, that... Okay, the geeky part of me that wants to believe this is all real roots for them. Because I love them together. This is Batgirl and Robin, you know? But the truth of the matter is, it's not. It's Oracle and Nightwing now. And where they've been and where they need to go, Nightwing's been a mess. And now they're finally reestablishing him, and he needed to go off alone in order to reestablish that person, who he is, and redefine that. And maybe in redefining himself, Barbara won't have that place in his life anymore. She'll always be the love of his life, but maybe he needs to be somewhere else and doing something else to be the man who he's going to be. And did you read the conclusion of Checkmate Outsiders, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. You see him there kind of leaping off to where he's at in his own book. I took that to be he's leaving the Outsiders and going to where we saw him at the beginning of the current run.
I completely agree. 100%.
This kind of resolved for me, like, where everything takes place now. Nothing that has been written so far by Wolfman has taken place until after that particular storyline ended. And that's why we're seeing the status quo that we're seeing with him. And I'm glad that Checkmate Outsider storyline ended that way, because now the character, like, all these books are resolved for me. They kind of come together for me because of that. To see this kind of... I'm glad that this issue was written, because they gave this relationship that was really at a crossroads a ending, whether it's temporary or not. You know, I don't mind if they get back together. There's storytelling reasons where they could put them back together. They gave this relationship for right now the ending that it needed for these characters to move on in a way that made sense. Did they have to tell this issue? No. But for me, I'm so glad they did, because it was so well written. Nightwing BK says, wow, this was a great issue. I totally did not expect it. I expected some weird excuse for not getting married, but by having Barbara insist that Dick go with Bruce to find himself, just like Bruce, it was great. Both Dick and Bruce were really getting dark prior to Crisis, so they both needed to find themselves, but in different ways. My favorite moment was the safe scene. Now we know the disadvantage to tights and small underwear around female superheroes. I don't blame Dick for that one. Is that a pun? I thought the other flashbacks were well written, and the emotions were handled elegantly. And Draco needs a book that doesn't get canceled every 5 issues. Seriously. Since I thought the Manhunter conclusion was a little weak, this issue helped satisfy me, and showed me that Draco does know how to write a great story. And what is Joe Bennett doing next? Hawkman. He was awesome here, a lot better than his 52 stuff, I think. Sorry, whenever I think Joe Bennett, I think Hawkman. He didn't actually say Hawkman, I did. But I love Joe Bennett since the Hawkman days. I was so glad to see him on this. The 52 stuff, you know, for a lot of the 52 artists, because of the fact that they were trying to maintain a 52 style, and most of them adhered to that, I think we saw from a lot of artists, you know, that they were changing their style or modifying it to try and keep that book consistent. And I give him a lot of credit for doing that. So his 52 stuff looked a little different because I feel that he was trying to maintain the 52 style. I don't know if you would agree with that, Jim. For any of the artists on 52, I would say.
Yeah, I think there was they wanted everything to flow, and they wanted it to be, you know, the same style. So I think, yeah, I agree.
Ringslinger adds, hello everyone, first post since I started listening to your podcast. Great job, guys. As far as the Nightwing Annual #2 goes, I really enjoyed it. I've already heard people complaining that it doesn't answer any questions, but I found that it really works great as a sequel to Birds of Prey #8. I'm not sure what questions people had about Dick anyway, since I felt his story was greatly self-explanatory. In the past, I always felt Dick was being too hard on himself in regards to his lady friends, but no longer. The way he told Babs about Corey and his engagement was awful, but in line with his guilt issues when it comes to Barbara Gordon. Personally, I'd love to see Nightwing move into the Birds of Prey corner of the DC Universe and watch his discomfort when surrounded by Babs' female friends. If Green Lantern had a rough go of it in Brave and the Bold with Supergirl batting her eyes, imagine what would happen with Dick in a room of Babs operatives in spandex, having to tell himself constantly not to flirt or stare too long. I really think it is time DC moved Dick and Babs. This one actually agrees with you, Jim. I really think it is time DC moved Dick and Babs forward. 30 years is long enough. With Ralph and Sue Dibney out of the mix, DC needs a married couple that people can relate to. Thanks for the great podcast. It makes the commute go a lot faster. And see, that's kind of a tough... Because the funny part is, it would be interesting to see him in the Birds of Prey corner of the universe because he had a relationship with Huntress as well.
Yeah, see, I think that would be a wonderful story with him over there and just...
And see, here's the thing. I liked him with Huntress. See, that's the funny part. Characters like Nightwing, one of the cool things about him is you want to see him in a relationship that'll work out, and he's compelling when he's in these relationships. I liked him with Corey when he was with Starfire. I thought they were a great relationship. So the problem is we say that Dick and Babs were, the constitute to be together, but, this relationship with Starfire was fantastic. The stuff with Huntress, while it was much shorter lived, the cool thing about that was she was very dark at that point. And he was kind of like the one mentoring her how to come into the light. And it was funny, after that spun out to her being a part of the Justice League with Batman. And that was an interesting relationship as well. So I do like that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why, yes, you say that you want to marry them or get them together permanently, but then the problem is you don't get all these things that spin out of the relationships that they have with other people. It's far more interesting to have Dick, with Corey, Babs, then Huntress, and then whoever else is going to come along. And the after effects of all that are a lot more interesting when they get together. Look how interesting Checkmate and Outsiders was with Sasha Bordeaux and Dick Grayson. It wouldn't have been anywhere near as interesting if Sasha had no relationship with Bruce Wayne prior. And she had that relationship with Bruce Wayne because Bruce Wayne wasn't married. Because she had a serious relationship with Batman. And that dynamic and the dialogue between those two could pop up just as easily between Dick Grayson and Catwoman. That kind of stuff I eat up. And I'm not saying I want that with all my superheroes. I love Wally West being married. I love Clark Kent being married. Those are people that you've moved on, their relationships, and you're doing that in those books. I just don't know that you need to do it with every character. And it's just, like I said, personal opinion on the whole thing. And at the end of the book, I was rooting for that couple. But I still am on the fence on would I like to see them get back together right now or not? I don't know. I like Nightwing's solo book so much right now, and I don't see the need for Barbara in there at this moment. Not saying that down the road you couldn't do it. Darth Dad just adds, this is flat out the best book of the week. An instant classic describes this story, and it is one that will have you standing up going, yes, or Dick, you idiot, more than once, which probably wouldn't have been a bad thing if I hadn't read it for the first time on my lunch break at work. You can get some strange look when you are sitting there by yourself talking and sharing. Oops, back on track. This really showed me that Andreyko is really a first-rate talent, and I, for one, would love to see him on a flagship title. I would be more than interested to read a fill-in story that he wrote on a title like Action Comics or Wonder Woman during the transition to Gail Simone. Heck, as much as I have respect for Wolfman, I would love to see him take over the reins of the Nightwing Monthly. I haven't heard an announcement yet on the series writer for Infinity Incorporated yet. I haven't heard an announcement yet on a series writer for Infinity Inc. yet, or how about the eventual Green Arrow relaunch? Well, here is hoping we get to read more from him each month than just Manhunter. The annual was a great read. I can't wait to read more good Barbara and Dick stories in the future. The funny part is, if Andreyko were writing it, I would eat up a Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson book if they put the two of them together. But I don't want her off. I don't want her off Birds of Prey. I don't want him off of his solo book. It's such a tough call. The truth of the matter is, though, it would be a very boring universe if they put all the couples together that we would love to see together, because it would get monotonous. I think you have to pick and choose, and I think they're doing that. I give them credit for what they're doing right now with Ollie Queen and Black Canary. I never saw that one coming in a million years, and that's what makes it all the more intriguing.
Yeah, I think Ollie Queen and Ollie and Dinah are going to be the new Ralph and Sue Digby. They're going to be the new one.
Ringslinger's just adding to his post from before. I think the writer really nailed Dick Grayson. Where I think the series has been slightly off in recent years is that the writers have focused so much on carving out Dick's corner in the DC Universe that they have made him very much a loner in his own book. Though he has had a supporting cast, they have moved in and out of his life rather quickly, and guest superhero appearances have been few and far between. Dick isn't Bruce. He very much craves friendship and time with his surrogate families. Titans, Outsiders, Bat Family, and Babs should be a much larger part of his life. Since he was Robin, he has always had friends in long underwear, and he seems lost without an emotional anchor character to play off of in his own book. Long story short, the annual nailed what Nightwing should be. The monthly for me is still missing the mark. Why? Because the powers that be are afraid to move Dick and Babs ahead too fast. It's been 30 plus years. Do you think that's the problem right now? Well, let me ask you this question, Jim. Do you think there is problems right now in Nightwing's monthly?
Right now? No. I think it's a great story, and especially now that we can really see where the Nightwing story takes place. It's after the Outsiders checkmate thing. It's after, and we can see where it's going, and probably actually a good idea where it's going to. So I think we're going to start seeing the next great Nightwing run. We've already seen it started, but I think things are going to build and build and build and build on.
Yeah, actually, you know what the funny part was? Checkmate Outsiders made me more excited for the Nightwing solo series than I've already been into it. I've been digging it every month, but when you get to the end of Checkmate and the Outsiders and you kind of see now that, technically Nightwing's solo series with Wolfman writing started here. That to me got me more excited for where he's at right now in that book. And I mean, that was totally how I read that this is the launching point to that, and I'm really into his solo series right now. He's a cool character. He's really a cool character. Tomalo says, this is a nice story if you don't know what has happened to them in the past. It was a good catch-up and quite a fun read. Wraithmaker says, I agree with everyone's sentiments about the annual, but I do have a question. Does anybody think Dick Grayson found himself when he went on that trip with Bruce or 1 year later? I think he's still the same guy he ever was. I don't really know what to make of him, actually. I think he is still trying to establish who he is. You see it in his own book, a lot of what's going on in his own book. And we got to keep in mind, these threads were written a little bit before the current storylines that we've been seeing, where he's established himself at the gym and started getting the Dick Grayson life going. I think there's a point there, though. I don't think in 52, when he was with Bruce, he got the same thing out of that Bruce did. I think he got out of that he needs to figure out who he is outside of the costume. And we're seeing that theme developed in his book right now. I think Outsiders made him see that he needs to know who he is outside of the costume too, because he's found out that he isn't the right fit for that team. That's where we're at right now with this character, and I like that. I like that now I've got kind of a firm feel continuity-wise and timeline-wise, because I've been kind of racking my brain together trying to figure out when all this stuff takes place. And now it kind of makes sense to me. I'm into this in a big way. And I think what they've done with him is really make him an interesting and valid character again in his own book, in a solo series. Whereas before his solo book, I agree, they were trying so hard to make him fit in the universe, they kind of forgot the basics of what makes him work. From Payback SXE, As someone who knows next to nothing about these two as an item, it was very informative. Also, just a great story as a whole. I gave it to my girlfriend to read, and I'm hoping she likes it as much as I did. And, the funny part was, the cool part, I knew, I read almost their entire relationship. And to see those two, what they were going through together, and some of the funny moments that were a little bit more realistic, like the comment about the things he was going through in his tights when they were in that tight space, and her comments about it. It was the right blend of humor, though, because that was also the same Barbara Gordon we're reading in Birds of Prey, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. The same sense of humor, yet she's smart and savvy and independent. These are these characters were written spot on with who I think they are. Comic Dads, I have two favorite characters in comics, Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. This is the best I've seen Dick Grayson written in years. I want to start the petition now to have Mark Andreyko and Joe Bennett on board as the new creative team. If Wolfman doesn't continue on with the book, I wouldn't mind seeing Andreyko write that book.
Oh, definitely. Just like I wouldn't mind seeing him on, Birds of Prey even.
I'm excited to see what McKeever does with that book, though. I want to see that first. Andreyko, you see, the thing is, I want to see Andreyko on Manhunter before I see him on anything else. I'm so glad that Manhater. I'm so glad that Manhunter is continuing. Unknown Fanboy, best book. Hence, it was on the bottom of my stack. Yeah, I'm weird like that. I was somewhat worried with Mark Andreyko writing it. Not that I don't like his writing. In fact, I've been enjoying Manhunter since the beginning. But his is not the first name that I think of when it comes to either Dick or Babs. When I think of these characters, I tend to be a Chuck Dixon fan. See Year One minis for both Dick and Barbara. Well, they're awesome. He's right. But Mark pulls it off very nicely. This book also, in my opinion, clears up some of the timeline issues of Infinite Crisis ending and 52 beginning. Andreyko does an excellent job presenting the relationship between the two without convoluting it and making it easy for someone who might be new to either Nightwing or Barbara in Birds of Prey. DC has been doing an excellent job of making the annuals they have put out so far, Teen Titans, Batman, and Nightwing, worth the extra cost by providing a relevant and good story, not just filler story with subpar art. Bravo, DC. Also, it has been the best explanation as to why Dick's costume was designed with pixie boots and whatnot. Yep. Ghost Bear 1. I gotta say, this was one of the most touching stories I've read in a long time. It really showed us why Babs and Dick are pretty much meant for each other. Plus, Barbara was hot as Batgirl. I gotta say, throughout the years when I was growing up and I was reading comics and all that stuff, Barbara Gordon's costume was absolutely stunning. I always thought that Batgirl's costume was a really cool costume. I don't know if you like that costume or not. I know you're kind of real picky on your costumes as well. But I thought her costume was a nice enough twist on Batman's. A little darker. It had but it had more yellow in it. And what did you think of Barbara Gordon's costume?
Oh, I thought it was good. Yeah, I liked the style and definitely liked the way it was looked and liked the way she was drawn.
What an amazing character. I mean, talk about a character who technically has moved forward, though, Jim. Formerly Batgirl, rich history in the DC universe, shot by the Joker in Killing Joke, a one-shot that came out so many years ago, but from that becomes Oracle. And then from, becoming Oracle becomes basically supporting cast into then Birds of Prey. In Birds of Prey, the character expands and goes crazy and was basically at one point in time when Morrison's JLA arc was running, she was the pulse of the universe and has grown out of that even to become very valid. That book has, since Chuck Dixon started straight on through to today, that book is carved its own place in the universe. It doesn't need to be attached to anything. It can intersect with all of these events that go on or not intersect, and it's still a book that's worth picking up every month because it has its own great arcs and great stories with compelling characters and supporting casts that make it such a wonderful read. It's outgrown being a Bat book. It started out as a Bat book, now it's very much its own entity, and that's in itself the strength of the character and the writing teams throughout the years that have really developed this book into something. To see some female characters rise in the DC universe that aren't Wonder Woman, it's really cool. And I don't mean there's a knock on Wonder Woman, it's just nice to see more strong female characters in the DC universe. And Barbara Gordon's that anchor that kind of brings all those characters together, and that's what I love about that Birds of Prey book. This is from John Mayo. I thought that the Annual did a great job of exploring the relationship between Nightwing and Oracle. The only thing that seemed a bit off was the timeline. Too much time seemed to pass between Nightwing getting injured at the end of Infinite Crisis and him getting on the boat to go find himself. While both Infinite Crisis and 52 imply that only a few days pass between those events, at least a month passes in the Annual. But it was a good, solid story, so I'm willing to pretty much so ignore the timeline being fudged. Except, you know what? I'm going to disagree with that to a certain extent, because I think they never really addressed the timeline in those books. And if you take a look at Batman, he needed some time to train and work with Harvey in order for him to take over Gotham.
Right.
He didn't just walk in a few days and say to Harvey, hey, you're running Gotham. He had to have taken some time to do that. And that's where I think that month, or around that ballpark, whatever it was, in the Annual, is consistent with what was going on with Batman at the time. I don't know how you feel about that, Jim.
Yeah, that helped, because that was an issue I had with the Batman and Face to Face when we talked about it. Was, did Bruce Wayne actually turn over the mantle? And because I took it in my initial read, I took it that Infinite Crisis ends the next day 52 begins. Or, the Infinite Crisis ends the next day they're on the boat. Well, this really did show that there was some time, and that helped flesh everything out for me.
Yeah, because that seemed to be that time that, like, Diana got herself together and Clark got himself together. It was at least that time where all of them kind of got to the point where they were all standing at the boat together, at the crossroads. So I guess that was off-camera time, though. I agree with him in the sense that was never addressed in that issue of Infinite Crisis at the end, that a certain amount of time had passed.
Right.
And that's what he's trying to point out, and I agree with him. I guess I'm taking that the Batman book established that, this established that more so than anything else has. I haven't seen anywhere else, though. Esteban89 says, much like John Mayo, my only problem with this issue was the timeline that confused the hell out of me. I just accepted that it was kind of screwed up and moved on. I love this issue, and I'm glad that they acknowledge... I just accepted that it was kind of screwed up and moved on. I love this issue, and I'm glad that they acknowledge the fact that Dick and Barbara really should be together. I'm hoping someday, a long way down the line, that the two do end up together. You know what? I agree with them on that. Except, see, then that goes back to what you're saying. So I am kind of... I see, you know what, when you get that emotional response going, Jim, where you sit there and say, I'd love to see these characters aged, I get it. I can feel that emotional thing, too, where I can say, I'd love to see these two eventually wind up together. But I think what it is for me is I always want that feeling of, I want to see these two wind up together. You remember the show Moonlighting?
Yeah.
Remember when Dick and Maddie got together, how, like, some of the sparks seemed lost from the show?
Yes, but the reason for me why it lost the spark is because they didn't move it on. Yes, they got together, and then they just kind of halted it.
Well, where do you move it on to then?
Well, here's the thing. Who's the Boss? With Tony Danza and I can't think of what her name, the actress is.
I know who you're talking about.
They had when that show ended, those two got together and they started the process of them. You could see them going into marriage. You can see it going on to something else. You could see, the kids growing up and doing their own life. Samantha moved out.
Could you see another 20 years of Who's the Boss with them being married and making it just as interesting as they did before they got married?
I would say change the name of the title, change the premise of it. Instead of it being about Tony Danza, instead of being about Tony and...
She used to be the boss?
Well, no, I would actually do it. Have it be changed that it's about Samantha and her life, and then you have the other character. Do a new show with a different focus on it.
Just like Joni Loves Chachi.
Well, hey, Joni Loves Chachi was an awesome show,
and
I thought that was wonderful. I thought they didn't give it enough time. They didn't, that had the potential of being a great episode.
It didn't find the right audience. And you know how many comic books they've said that about?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they brought back the character that they originally moved on.
Yeah. See, exactly. Like, for example, the Joni Loves Chachi episode where the band goes and plays at that college.
Shoot me down.
And Chachi is, drinking too heavily, and they started exploring different stuff. The fact that I can quote a Joni Loves Chachi episode is kind of scary for me.
What did they explore that you found so incredibly compelling that you felt that series should have continued?
Okay, they started with looking at the characters, and they weren't the same goofy kids. They were growing up. They were becoming adults. They were making the correct decisions. They were making the wrong decisions. We were seeing the characters, instead of being the Happy Days fluff, la da 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 da, Happy Days. They were actually being realistic. They were being real people. They had hey, I have to make these actual decisions. It's not just a 30 minutes or however long the show was of just happiness and fluff. There was substance to them, and I think it.
But you got to remember. Wait, hold on. With that show, you got to remember that even with that show, the tension between the two is what kept it going, because they didn't actually marry him until Happy Days. When the series Happy Days ended, is when they married those two.
Right. And I would have actually rather seen them get married and then continue on the story. Instead of the focus being Mr. C, Mrs. C, and the Fonz, the story is about Joni and Chachi.
But they spent years exploring those characters, and then what are you going to do? Have them have kids?
Yeah. Dude, it works for soap operas. That's my main argument with the old comic book characters growing old. It works in the soap operas. You see that multi-generations of parents, of family, they're like 3-4 generations out there who all watched All My Children. And they all had, when they were young, had their characters who were their people. And they just, instead of Silver Age, Golden Age, Bronze Age comics with the retcon, you have these different characters doing the different things.
The problem is, though, and this is where you run into the problem with comics. You've got people who've grown up for years with Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne's been established as Batman. He gets established in movies as Batman. So now all of a sudden, you're going to do another Batman movie. Do you then do it with Tim Drake as Batman?
Well,
because you can't. You're going to have the comic books, the main comics, Detective and Batman, which you're targeting a new audience with this film or this cartoon series, whatever you're doing. Who do you make Batman in that cartoon series if you're going to draw that audience over? And how much of your audience do you turn off by now saying your dynamic of this driven Batman whose parents died, this person whose butler, Alfred, you've grown close to and all that, this is your main character. His interactions with Commissioner Gordon, with the Harvey Bullock and all that. Because if you're going to age him, Gordon and Bullock, Gordon's going to die at some point.
Yeah. And the way
and I got to be honest with you, they took Gordon out of the book, and they tried to move forward the Gotham City Police Department. They put a new commissioner in there for quite a number of years. And I got to be honest with you, I was jumping for joy, geeking out when Commissioner Gordon's back. And that's just it. You could have put somebody else in that role. I understand that. You could have put a Tim Drake there and an aged Bruce. But ultimately, if you find a way to de-age Bruce and make him Batman again, I'm going to be that much more geeked out by it than I am. I think Tim Drake's carved out a great role as Robin, but you're not... I don't know. I see both sides of it. I see people who are saying it'd be great to see Babs and Nightwing get together, but do you want to see them get together and get married and have kids and have the same relationship that Wally and Linda Park have? And the universe then becomes homogenous. What makes it different?
But here's the thing: Wally and what's his wife's name?
Linda.
Wally and Linda. Here's the thing: Wally and Linda will have a different relationship than what Babs and Dick will have. So you won't have the same thing. On the outside surface, you'll have this. It'll be a similar situation where they're married with kids. But how they deal with it is what makes it different. Is what makes the story interesting. What happens to the kids?
How are you going to see though? Okay. You've got Linda Park, who's a strong, independent woman, who's been a reporter for years. Not a wishy-washy character by any sense. I would honestly say Oracle's a very strong character. Linda is too. A lot of similarities between the two. You got Wally, who's been kind of the out there character who found himself through Linda, and they kind of got together. Actually, a real similar story to certain extents to Dick Grayson's, where Wally had some previous girlfriends and things like that. He wasn't as much of a womanizer as Nightwing, but there isn't too drastic a difference between the two characters. They grew up together. You know, they're from the same generation. I don't see them being that drastically different that, you know, you're going to... How does a teenager come and jump on board the DC Universe and latch on to any characters when everybody's married, they've got kids? You know, where is that new person going to jump onto the DC Universe? Because you gotta figure your target audience to grab as far as for starting off with this. The DC Universe has got to be the teenage audience, the high school crowd. The way the books are written now and everything, straight on through to our age and beyond. Okay, but I mean, you know, that's going to be your core group is going to be falling into those age groups as your starting audience. Are you going to be alienating that group by marrying off and aging everybody? That's kind of my take on it. Where you've got a Tim Drake in his own book right now who is the character to latch on to. I know what you're saying. Then, if you put Tim Drake in the role of Batman, you could bring about a new Robin. Here's the problem with that. They did that with Jason Todd, and people called in to kill him. Do you run that risk now? You're taking a successful book in Robin that's already working with a character people love as Robin. You take the risk now of making him a Batman that people hate and putting in a Robin that people hate.
Here's the thing. You're talking about jump on point and, you know, alienating the teenagers. One, as I said, it's going to be you make it a prolonged process, and you'll minimize your damage. But two, when you're introducing that new Robin, when you're introducing Bruce Grayson as the new Robin, that will be something that's significant. You'll have the old generation who will say, man, I remember when Dick Grayson was first Robin. You know, and then the other generation says, I remember when, you know, the current Batman, Tim Drake, became Robin. Now to have this new Robin, that'll keep that going. But also you'll have you have to reintroduce. You can't just age your characters. You have to introduce the next generation. You have to prep the next generation and develop this next generation of younger heroes who will eventually take the role. And maybe you'll completely swerve the universe by having this person who you think, oh, they're going to be the next Batman. Turns out they're not the next Batman. This person jumps into the role, or something happens. Or
maybe they'll go read Spider-Man, who's still Peter Parker, and everybody can relate to. That's the problem with that is you're taking iconic characters. You can get away with that with they pulled it off with the Flash, where it was Barry Allen for years and years, and they switched it over to Wally West, and it worked successfully. They did it with Bart Allen, and the sales went down. I loved the Bart Allen series. I'm with you on that. But look what happened with that book. The sales went down. Now, I agree it was a plan. That 13-issue series was a plan that was meant to close off and bring Wally back anyway. Regardless, though, there was a part of there that you and I thought that they were taking, and part of the reason why we liked that 13-issue series so much is you and I thought they were giving Bart the ball. Mm-hmm. And that he was going to go with it. And ultimately they went back to Wally. I got to be honest with you, after reading All Flash #1, they made the absolute right decision. It's great to see Wally back. The swerve was perfect. I'm glad that they put Bart in that role, but I'm still glad to see Wally is my guy. And he's back for 231 issues now. You're going to have a lot of that in there. It's hard to move, and it gets harder when you're doing that with icons. We say that it's so easy to mess with Bruce Wayne. Would you want to see somebody else's Superman? Would you want to read Superman with Connor Kent as Superman? You love Connor Kent as a character. Would you love to see him be the Man of Steel with his own different supporting cast where Clark Kent has retired? Now, it's real easy for us to sit here and say that, well, he's an alien and we could see him be immortal. But we're then putting different rules on him than we're putting on Bruce Wayne. See, for me, I'm going on the standpoint of the sense that I forgive a lot of retconning with Bruce Wayne. I mean, technically, if you look at how old Nightwing is, and how old Jason Todd is, and how old Tim Drake is, Bruce Wayne should be, by all extent, ancient.
Yeah. Bruce should be a lot older than what he actually is.
We forgive a lot of that because you like seeing Bruce Wayne's interaction with Dick Grayson, with Jason Todd in this crazy role that he's in, with Tim Drake. You lose some of that if you age him too far, and I don't know. I think right now what they've done is with Tim Drake, they've given us a Robin for today's generation. That, he's now, instead of being a ward, he's been adopted. Instead of wearing these crazy little shorts, he's got on this really cool looking suit. That's more contemporary, though. It's got more of that ninja look, which today's audience can latch onto. He's a cooler looking Robin. It fits the cartoon audience. If you take a look at the Batman TV series that's on right now, it's got more of an anime look to it. It's kind of an anime Americanized hybrid, which is more appealing to today's audience. It's still Bruce Wayne in that role, though, because Bruce Wayne's story is cool. I was the son of the original Batman. It worked in Batman Beyond. That worked, but they've done that kind of thing, and it's still ultimately look at what the Hollywood animation decided to do. They went back and did Batman Year 3 with Bruce Wayne. Why did they do that? Why not do a sequel to Batman Beyond? Because of the fact that ultimately when you go back to it, these are iconic characters. And to a certain extent, you can move them forward, but you've got to be careful on how you do it before you get people to jump off. They voted to kill Jason Todd.
I know. Dude, I know, I understand.
Because he wasn't Dick Grayson enough. Now, Tim Drake held in a way that Jason Todd didn't. And Tim Drake clearly has his own role where he's a little bit different. But I mean, it's part of the problem with marrying Dick Grayson then to Barbara Gordon. Take it back to our discussion here, is when you move them ahead like that, a lot of times you risk on a big level losing your audience when you do it. I think, if you take your Dinah Lance and Ollie Queen and make that the focal point of the universe right now, that we're going to take the risk and move these two characters on, you're doing it in a way that addresses what you're asking for, without doing it with the entire universe. We're going to dabble here. What happens with Ollie Queen and Dinah Lance? Now, if people eat that up and sales are through the roof, are we going to see another marriage somewhere down the road? You darn betcha. But if that series fizzles out, are we going to see them do that anytime soon? No. So they're doing what you're saying to a certain extent, but they're taking a calculated risk. And instead of moving everybody forward like that, they're doing something where they're giving a future to these two characters who you wouldn't expect it with, and making it a big event. Let's see what happens with this book. Does that book last? There's already a lot of people who are concerned about, is that book going to be as interesting with the two of them together like that? You've already limited Ollie now with the kind of storytelling that you can do with him. Now, I'm not saying that I don't think it's going to be great. I do, but it depends on who the writer is and what they're going to do to make it a unique experience with having the couple married. And that's the part, a lot of times when they marry superheroes off, it's what do you do to keep that a unique experience that makes it different from what they're doing from Superman and Lois Lane. Other than it's different than how they handle the situation. Otherwise, you're going to get the same stories. They have Son. Son gets kidnapped. They handled it a little differently than Clark and Lois did, but it's still Son gets kidnapped story time. Or they're deciding to have kids. Do they have kids? Do they not have kids? They're handling it differently than the other person. Maybe they'll have kids, maybe they won't, but it's still the same storytelling. You've got to start showing your audience that you can make that different and compelling and not keep it the same monotonous storyline over and over again. Whereas with Dick Grayson, you're now putting him with a girl from his past who is a little off the beaten track compared to your Starfire and your Barbara Gordon and all that. And what's that storyline going to be like? And that's going to be a very contained story, I'm sure, but it's an interesting thing you can do with him right now because he's not married. And you can bring this kind of past in that nobody's ever seen before. So I don't know. I think you need a mixture of that. I'm not against moving the characters forward and having them marry and have kids and all that. I don't think you can do it with everybody, though. I think when you do that, you limit yourself. Just me. We'll see. We really are talking about this a lot.
I know.
I'm gonna have to cut some of it out when I go through and edit. But he says, this is from John Mayo. One thing I'd like to eventually see, sort of as a follow-up to this story, would be focusing on an odd sort of interaction that Oracle and Starfire must have as a result of all this stuff with Nightwing. It could make for an interesting Birds of Prey annual. That would be having them team up or something. And, Jedi Nightwing follows it up with, what about a Brave and the Bold issue featuring the two working together to save Nightwing? And John just says, since that would mean that it would be drawn by George Perez, I think it's a brilliant idea. And I'm really curious what sort of spin Mark Waid would put on the relationship between Oracle and Starfire. This is the sort of story that Devin Grayson really excels at. I'm sure that Waid could do an excellent job, and I'm not sure how it would all play out. And this is from Jedi Nightwing. Let me start by saying that in recent months, starting with number 86, I have reread most of Devin Grayson's run on Nightwing. It's not as bad as I remembered, but there is still a lot about it that I don't like. For starters, I love Dick as a cop, Nightwing, Blockbuster, Torque, and almost everything else about the book that came from Dixon. I hated Tarantula, Dick always being wounded, Woe is me, Nightwing, the burning of the circus, the blowing up of his building, everyone knows his secret identity, mobbed up, renegade, and almost everything else from Devin Grayson. Her early work on the book wasn't bad. In fact, I love the issues around 83, if memory serves, that involved Deathstroke and Batgirl. Upon rereading, I can see what she was attempting to go with, way too long, the story of his mob work that ended up being stalled by Infinite Crisis. It is unfortunate that she was never able to finish in the direction that she originally intended. She was also a lightning rod on the book, with so many internet fans hating her every move on the book. With all that to consider, I never want her to touch Nightwing again. And John just says, Devin Grayson is a writer that I think does better on specific stories than with an ongoing series. Her work on Nightwing left a lot to be desired, but check out things like the Arsenal Batman one-shot she did, which used the interaction between those characters to explore not only how those two characters are, but how they each see Nightwing and Green Arrow. It was a great character study. She's done a few other stories like that, and they tend to be much, much better than her work on an ongoing title that she's been on. I think that Devin Grayson has a great understanding of Nightwing and his relationship with both Starfire and how that would impact how those two characters would interact. Certainly other writers could explore the same idea, and some might even do it better, but it seems to be the sort of story that would play to Devin Grayson's strengths as a writer. Jedi says, I see what you're saying. I just don't want anything or anyone that brings back that Russian negativity that she and Bruce Jones brought to the title so long ago. The best examples of her work that I have read are her early issues in the 80s of Nightwing. Also, 86 was a great issue. I don't remember who did the art, but that bike scene was excellent. She also wrote the Nightwing Huntress Limited. That was also a great quick read that I thought added some depth to the Bat family and gave fuel for the later stories that involved Babs and Huntress. So how about the Brave and the Bold story featuring Babs, Starfire, and the Huntress working together to save Nightwing? And he said, great job on your 52 episode of Comic Timing. I think it was the best episode that I ever heard from those guys. That was really good, actually. And Snack Pants just said, am I the only one that finds it funny that the only valuable issue in the Birds of Prey run is issue number 8? I think Bruce put it best to Barbara. The alien is just a phase. Dick belongs with Barbara. It's the basic law of the universe. Oh, Birds of Prey is a tremendous series. I totally disagree with that. Issue 8 was the most valuable issue because it had a low print run, and it was the first date between Nightwing and Barbara Gordon. It was a first issue that just, fans who never have touched a Nightwing or Birds of Prey issue but were reading Batman flocked to because it just was a bad history book, so that's why. Birds of Prey is a tremendous series and has been all along, I would say. From JD number 74, this book has got to be one of the favorite Nightwing issues I've read in some time. I have always loved Dick Grayson as a character, and while, though, the series just hasn't been as well written as I would have liked. This story, on the other hand, was so well written. I loved all of those little lost scenes, like the first time Babs met Starfire, or when Dick first sees Barbara after being shot by the Joker. I love seeing their first team up together, though. It was really humorous. I love the relationship between Dick and Barbara, and I hope that they find their way back to each other. Again, I love Nightwing, and this book is just so solid. It was so solid that I would love to see the creative team of the Annual actually write the regular series. Just a thought. And you know what, Jim, let's stop right there, because then they start talking about how no one can write Dick Grayson better than Marv Wolfman, and Chuck Dixon comes damn close. The Chuck Dixon run on Nightwing was tremendous. Did you read any of those issues at all, Jim?
The Chuck Dixon stuff?
Uh-huh. I don't know if you've read anything. I'm trying to think of what
I haven't picked up anything beyond 1 year later. That's the beginning of Nightwing for me.
Okay. Some of the past stuff, when you see Chuck Dixon's name on it, he's a great person to read. I echo the thoughts that Huntress Nightwing miniseries was a great read by Devin Grayson. I did enjoy that quick read. But the Chuck Dixon stuff that he was writing early on when it was first Nightwing solo series had that same kind of energy that you're reading right now in the book. So I recommend any of those trades of anything that Dixon did early on. There's a lot of energy to that series. I'm just trying to think. As far as Nightwing, now that we've talked about where Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson are, what do you want to see coming out of Nightwing series now? We've done this past storyline with Nightwing, Jim, that's going on right now. Where do you want to see them go with Nightwing? Like, if you had a wish, do you want to see him have another serious relationship? Do you want to see him dating? Do you want to see him back with Barbara? Do you want to see him with Starfire, with somebody else? Where are you at right now on... I mean, let's sum that up. Where would you like to see him go?
Well,
and how soon?
I would like to see him and Babs. I would, and I actually... Here's another comment that has a risk of running a long tangent, but I would like to see him on Birds of Prey. I would like to see his individual series where he is who he is, and have him on Birds of Prey. I know Birds of Prey team is an all-female team, but I would like to see Dick Grayson on that, just to throw a monkey wrench and change things around a little bit.
My only disagreement with that, I wouldn't mind seeing him guest star in Birds of Prey. Like, if they do a relationship with him again with Barbara, what I would like to see is what they've done with him in the past, where he is more supporting cast in the background. Like, if they needed him to rescue in a mission, they could bring him in. But one of the strengths of Birds of Prey for me is it has an opportunity to take some female characters in the DC universe, both new and old characters, and flesh them out and make them more interesting and have them interact with each other and give us some background to who they are in a way that they were probably never used before. I think once you start putting male characters on the team, what's going to eventually happen is you start with Nightwing, then you're going to start, and if the sales go up, they're going to add another guy to the team. And it's going to stop being Birds of Prey. It's going to stop being what makes that book so great and so different from any other team. I like the all-female aspect of the book. Female agents who are put together, for a common theme. It's just a very strong book, and has its kind of own little niche to it the way that it is. I get what you're saying in the sense that you'd like to see, like, if they get together, Nightwing. I don't know if I'd want to see him directly on the team, though, as an agent. I wouldn't mind seeing Barbara coordinate more of what Dick is doing in his book, maybe, being a support person there, but again, being in the background. And maybe having the two, like, using their annuals together to have, like, the once-a-year big storyline involving them, if that makes sense. Kind of like what they did with this. If they did that, I would be more happy with it, because you could keep what makes a good Dick Grayson solo series good, except... I do enjoy the little flirtatious things he has going on with people when he was in the gym, and there was that little flirtation going on with the girl in the gym. Even though that never panned out or turned into anything, there was that hint that maybe something was going to happen between them. You know what I mean? It's a tough call on that one, whether or not I'd like to see them. I run hot and cold on the idea of him permanently with somebody. I don't know. I can, but if they did put him together, ideally, I don't know that I would want to see. No, matter of fact, I'll tell you right now, I would not want to see him permanently on Birds of Prey. I would more like to see him as a background character. Kind of like the one, like every so often you'll see Barbara go on maybe like a date with Dick Grayson or something like that because he's in town. I'd actually like to see them keep them in separate towns and have them work out their relationship being in separate bases of operation. Keeping the Birds of Prey where they have them now,
right.
Keeping him where they have him now, and how does that work for a couple as a dynamic? It would separate them from some of the other couple books where the couples are in the same place. Obviously, it looks like Black Canary and Ollie Queen are going to be working out of the same base of operations, although they're going to have to deal with the fact that she is running the Justice League, and it doesn't look like Ollie's going to be on the Justice League, unless something befalls Red Arrow.
Yeah, actually, I could actually go along with your ideas with Nightwing, but I don't know. I admit I have completely different ideas than most normal readers. I fully admit that.
Except you know what the thing is, what makes comics so compelling? Just to defend your ideas. A lot of times, me as a fan, I'm more leery about them trying new things because you want to protect your character. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But a lot of times, I like the new ideas. Like, I was leery for them to put Bart in the role of the Flash, but I found myself enjoying that series. I think it's refreshing that you're willing to take these big leaps. I get excited to hear some of your ideas. I don't always immediately agree with them. But then sometimes if they go that route, and then I read it and it's very good and well-written story time, a very good and well-written storytelling, I can latch onto that and get into it, like I did with The Flash when Bart was on there. So, I mean, I was into the idea of Bart continuing on as The Flash and having a legacy. I got into it. So, I say that, but I am very protective of certain characters. You've heard me rant about, through this discussion.
Now, here, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go along with like an Elseworld story arc where it's not just one, it's an ongoing Elseworld series? So it's not the current thing where it ages and where it grows, and have it span the entire DCU, where it's an ongoing thing where they do this, where they change the characters around, where they switch things around, but it's an ongoing series of this.
Well, I mean, you got Marvel with their Ultimate line.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, something like that.
You could have DC have a real time line or something like that. They call it Real Time, where it's a line that specifically explores that. I'd love that. As a different line that kind of does it, and you got to follow that storytelling that you're talking about, but at the same time, we're getting the current continuity books that we're used to where you see Bruce Wayne as Batman. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely, I'd like that. I wouldn't mind if they did their own Ultimate line. I would love to see them do a new envisioning of Batman. And that I think we're seeing that with certain things like Batman Strikes and all that aimed at a younger reader, and that's great. But I wouldn't mind seeing something aimed at today's current audience where they, do what they're doing over at Marvel with Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Avengers, Ultimate JLA, where they reimagine it right from scratch. I wouldn't mind seeing them do that either. So, those are the types of things that kind of like what ifs. Jim, just to kind of sum up, because we'll talk about Outsiders Annual another point in time, just because we've kind of gone a really long discussion on this Nightwing one. But the funny part was this book really does give you an emotional response afterwards of what do we want from Barbara and Dick now, because it was so good and some of the moments were so humorous. What do you think of the annual format handling this type of thing? Like, do you think it was a good move to have Wonder Woman, Superman and Wonder Woman are being handled in a very different way. They're actually finishing books that are late. Let's be honest, that's what they're doing. These books, their storylines were late for whatever reason. Writing, art, whatever reason. Forget about the reason why. They're late for some reason. And their solution, and to keep the books going, is let's take the annuals and finish off these storylines. What do you feel about the annual line being used to complete storylines in these particular cases? Do you think it's a good move by the company to do that and then just move on with more issues on the series? Would you prefer that they waited and finished the storyline in the book? Would you prefer that they got a fill-in artist or a fill-in writer to complete the storyline in the correct order? What would you like them to do? I mean, as you're looking at these annuals, are you excited for the Wonder Woman annual to see the end of the Heinberg run?
Actually, no. I'm not. I like how the Nightwing Annual did the Nightwing story. I like how it was something that tied into the current universe. It kind of explained some gaps in some stories, but it was an individual story. It wasn't the end of an existing story arc. Same thing with the Superman. Now,
well, let's just in general talk about the Outsiders one.
Right.
The Outsiders one, very similar to what Nightwing did. It kind of filled in a story versus it being the conclusion to a storyline. So
right.
You're saying you prefer that to wrapping up something and moving on?
Yeah. See, now it's funny. The Outsider story for me was a finishing of the story arc that was going on before it, but it wasn't it was the past, wrapping up the wrapping up the 1 year storyline. Now, granted, I look at the Outsiders annual completely different than the Superman and the Wonder Woman annuals. I see Superman and Wonder Woman as basically the story ends and we'll finish it here, whereas the Outsiders flowed the issue of the Outsiders right before the Outsiders Annual completely flowed. One went boom, boom into the other one. So Outsiders Annual for me was kind of like a double-sized issue, which I actually was okay with. I kind of liked it. Now, if I look at the Nightwing Annual and the Outsiders Annual, I like Nightwing Annual better because it was a separate story, but it fit into the universe, whereas the Outsiders was a continuation of the ongoing monthly. Now, Outsiders is better than Superman and Wonder Woman because those were just abrupt ends and we'll fix it later. Whereas Outsiders seemed like it was a plan, it was a natural flow.
Okay. Which makes more sense.
Right.
What do you think about like fill-in issues, like what they've done with Action Comics, where we've gotten in Superman, where we've gotten some fill-in issues to keep the book monthly, or when it hasn't been monthly, they've given us like 2 issues in a month of fill-in stories. Have you enjoyed those fill-in stories? Was it a good move for DC to do that? Would you rather that they didn't and just delayed the book and just not put anything out? What do you think about how they handled that? Obviously, they were in a position where the book was already late. We've talked to death about how it would be great if they get more issues in the can, and they're trying to do that with more and more series, where they get the issues in the can first before jumping into a particular series. But in this case, what happened was they thought that they had the ball running, and they run into a jam. Do you agree with the fill-in issues? Did you like them?
Yes and no. It's weird. Like, one of the things that did throw me off of my reading of Action Comics and my reading of the Batman was because of the fillers that were thrown in there. And what I ended up doing was picking things up, setting them aside, and then reading them in lump, at the end. And if the only title I was collecting was Action Comics and Batman, I'll tell you right now, I'd be miffed, with the way it was handled. Because I'd go out there, I'd want to pick up the next issue, see what's going on with my character, and it's a new story. Like, what's going on here? Why isn't it continuing the other story? And that would have thrown me off. I would have rather seen a slight delay, and I say slight, not a lengthy delay, waiting for the continuation of the story. But because I'm getting so many issues, I was able to say, oh, okay, I see what they're doing, and set it aside and wait until that story finishes and my regular story continues on. So I look at it differently than probably a lot of people, just because.
I don't know how differently you look at it as. It's kind of funny. You notice on our when we get our top bullets from our listeners, you don't see Superman and Batman on there.
Right.
On any of those books. Mainly because of the fact that I'm a fan of fill-in teams and creative teams doing that. I just wish that they had finished the arc first. I think they were in a catch-22 in this case, that it just wasn't, there wasn't enough planned in that case. And they write comics and they do them, before they used to have issues, tucked away in a drawer, and the storytelling, the way that they handled that was a little bit different. It's a tough case now because I like Last Son. I think it's a very good story. 851, I'm really enjoying it. I think the art's real sharp on it. I like the whole theme of the thing. It gets a little bit, it loses a little bit of steam when you read a couple of fill-in issues in between. By the same token, it's kind of like, we're not getting a whole lot of Superman this year if we don't do that. So I applaud them for realizing that we got to give the fans something. So we're going to get some, and they put some solid creative teams on those fill-in storylines. So it wasn't like they were, junk issues. I enjoyed them. It's just, it was kind of weird the way that they were released in there, and then you're back to Last Son. Now all of a sudden we're going to be starting another Jimmy Olsen storyline that ties in with Countdown, and we still don't have the ending to Last Son. This has happened now with this, and it's happened with Wonder Woman. The sad part is, I kind of agree with you on the end of the Wonder Woman arc. I'm going to pick up the annual because I enjoyed the Heinberg run. But am I, chomping at the bit for it? No, I'm more interested in following Countdown to Final Crisis than I am worrying about the Wonder Woman annual.
Here.
I'm more interested in something that's coming out in May 2008 than I am right now in a Wonder Woman annual that's going to come out sooner. And that's pretty sad because I was really into the Heinberg storyline. I'll finish it and I'll read it, and I'm sure it's going to be good because I'm not going to lie, I thought that the Heinberg issues were good. But am I excited about it? Am I going to rush to read it? No. It will probably sit on the bottom of my stack, not because I choose to read my favorite books that way. It's because, quite frankly, I'm not as interested in finishing it. The sad part is, Last Son, when I read 851, I loved some of the moments with Chris and Zod and where that development's going. I got the same problem, though. I'm afraid when this Action Comics Annual number 11 comes out, I don't know when that even is. Totally drawing a blank on that, if it's been solicited or not, and whether it has is irrelevant right now. I'm kind of like, am I going to care when that ends? Well, as much as I enjoyed 851, it was a great issue and all that, it lost something for me being so far away from the other ones. It's a top-notch story. No arguing with that. It's going to make a top-notch trade when it's done. I wish I had waited for the trade and I read it that way because I think this is going to be a story. Last Son, when you read it in the trade format, it's going to knock your socks off. I think the same thing with that Heinberg Wonder Woman story. It's going to knock your socks off when it's read like that. The sad part is, though, you're dealing with a serialized medium where the books are supposed to come out in a certain timely manner. Bi-monthly's fine. Got no problem with that. But, if you solicit something bi-monthly and it doesn't come out, it kind of hurts. Not taken away from the fact that they were great stories. So I'm more of a fan of what they're doing with the annuals, what they did with Nightwing and Outsiders, than what they're doing with Wonder Woman and Superman right now. I really wish that... I don't know if I wish that they had dropped the story, because you don't want them to do that, but I wish that they had more foresight to have more in the can before they did this. I think they're learning, comic companies in general, but we also still see this keep cropping up. And this isn't exclusive to DC. Marvel has this problem too, where things just take a while to be put out. Poor Kevin Smith has, a reputation of not even finishing certain storylines, and let's not even talk about Spider-Man Black Cat. And the problem is, I like Kevin Smith's writing when he finishes off. Like Spider-Man Black Cat, I did end up finishing reading that just because I'm like, I'll go finish reading it. It was a good story, but God, did it take forever to release. And that's the sad part is, I think our expectations with it'd be like, okay, I expect a week, 24, the TV series 24. I expect that to come out every week and to have another hour of this storyline. Well, if you wait a year to give me that storyline again, I'm going to get behind another show. And is it going to have as much bang for me? No, because, I spent 10 hours watching 24. You've waited now. You've given me a 6-month delay time in between. I've gotten into other shows. You put it back on. You give me an episode. and then you make me wait another 6 months for the other episode. Am I going to be as into that? No, I'm not. It's kind of a natural thing. I'd like to see the Superman and Batman books get back up to that level. I'd like to see Wonder Woman get back up to that level. I'm excited as can be that Gail Simone's going to be on Wonder Woman because of her track record. Let's be honest. Gail Simone puts out a script, books get out, they get out on time. And they end up being great books. Look at Birds of Prey. Every month, Birds of Prey is a quality book. Look at Gen 13. Every month, Gen 13 is a quality book. Those books might have slight delays for whatever reason, like an art delay or something like that. But do you remember a delay on Gen 13, Jim?
Say again?
Do you remember a delay on Gen 13?
No.
Do you remember a delay on Birds of Prey?
No.
Do you remember a delay on Welcome to Tranquility?
No.
If they were there, they're a couple weeks. It's something small. I'm not saying that they weren't there. I can't pretend I was keeping track.
I never thought, when's the next? Come on, it should be out by now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if it was such a minuscule delay, a couple weeks or something like that, that you didn't really notice, if it was there. That's the type of thing. Robin. Robin is a book that comes out monthly. And I don't mind a fill-in artist here and there, because, for whatever reason, don't take me out of the storytelling. It's interesting. It's an interesting debate. Are you going to... Okay, let's do it this way. Let's sum this up with this question. Are you picking up the Wonder Woman Annual?
Yes.
Okay, I am too.
Yeah.
Okay, so ultimately, even though we're saying that, we are still going to pick up that annual and finish the storyline, right?
Oh, yeah. Here's the thing. When Nightwing Annual came out, I didn't order it, through Comical because I wanted to have it in my hands on Wednesday when it came out. I went to my local comic shop. They sold out. I went to a second local comic shop. They were sold out. I went to a third local comic shop and finally got it that way. But I actually drove around the city of Cleveland finding these, going to these different shops and finally to get my hands on it. With Wonder Woman, if it comes out, if I were to do it, I would just say, if I went to the local shop and they didn't have it, I'd say, oh, okay, I'll just order it online and I'll get it next week. Heck, I'm probably even going to order that and I'll get it, whenever I order my shipment. I'm not going to pick it up at the local shop. That's not something that I'm going to go, oh, I must have this now.
What about the Action Comics Annual? Are you picking that baby up?
Exact same thing. I'm getting it, but it's not something I'm like, oh, I must have this. I can't wait for this. I'm anticipating it. No,
I'm actually just going to say
getting
ditto.
it, and I'm going
to say ditto.
And I'll probably enjoy it. I'm enjoying the story. I'm enjoying the art. I'm enjoying everything about the title. I'm just not going, woohoo, I can't wait for this to come out. Oh, my God, marking down the calendar, for when it comes out. When it comes out, I'll pick it up, and I know I'll enjoy it because I was enjoying, and I still am enjoying the Action Comics story arcs, but it's a different enjoyment. It's a different level of commitment to it.
What is your favorite book today?
Oh,
just off the top of your head. It doesn't have to be one that you can even say that you're stuck to. What's the first book that comes to mind right now? If I were to say to you,
Robin.
Okay, so Robin's your favorite book right now. My favorite right now is All New Adam. Do you notice both books that we picked right now are books that come out monthly, on time? They have continuing storylines. You see what I'm following my theme here? I'm a huge Batman geek, in the sense that is my hero, and I think it's sad right now that I'm not as I did pick him as one of my favorite books for the month, but I'm still not as into him as I am into All New Adam. Right now, and I want Batman to make me feel the way All New Adam does. I want Hawkman to make me feel the way All New Adam does again. But he doesn't have a book. I don't know. I think Jim. I think we'll wrap up this conversation right here, and we'll do this, Jim. What I'm going to do with this annual section, Jim. I'm going to put it on the end of the show, like after our the end, we wrap up the show as kind of a bonus track for everybody. Mm-hmm. So they can kind of hear our discussion about the Nightwing Annual, make it afterwards. That way people who want to jump off, just because it's old topics, and I think we'll do the same thing in the future with the Outsiders one.
Okay.
Because we got a lot of forum participation and all that, so I think it'd be great to do this again with the Outsiders one, but we'll make it like a bonus type of thing to throw it on, because we got a full show's worth of stuff on there anyway, between everything that we have, so we'll throw this on as just a little bonus track at the end, where I'll edit it very lightly, if at all, and just put it on there and just say, hey, this is a thank you to you guys for being with us all this time. Here's a little bonus conversation from Jim and myself, and we'll throw it out as part of Thursday's episode, and we'll do it that way.
Okay, cool.
And we'll do the Outsiders one again in the future, because I have a funny feeling that'll be a pretty meaty discussion. But I'm glad we had a talk about, and I wanted this to lead to a talk about how we feel about the differing use of the annuals and the way that they're using it. Do we feel that they're better as isolated? I don't mind if they end a storyline, but I'd like them to do it kind of like, remember the new Teen Titans storyline with Deathstroke and Terra and Judas Contract,
right,
where the annual was used to kind of sum the whole thing up as a double-sized issue? I would rather see them do that and have it come out like when 851 came out, the next month should be the annual where we get the double-sized annual with the Last Sun. I'd like to see that be the way that Last Sun was wrapped up. Same thing with the Wonder Woman arc.
right.
And I think it's sad that at this point in time, we're waiting on issue 11's coming out next of Wonder Woman, and we still don't have the stuff that should have been in issue 5. So I can't wait to read. I can't say that I can't wait to read that, but it is something. It's kind of like, when are we ever going to? When are we? Has that even been solicited yet?
I haven't seen it.
Either
annual.
Yeah. So it's pretty scary. I am glad that they're moving on, because they have no choice at this point. I'm hoping now that they've learned from this, though, and that we, especially with Superman, that's something where I'm hoping that they've kind of got this fixed up so we don't have this problem again.
There's only one real comment that I want to clarify here. As you can tell, obviously, from this recording, it was recorded quite a while ago. It's been something we've been sitting on for quite some time. I didn't know where I was going to throw it on. There's actually, for a while there, I was thinking, at this point, we might as well not even throw it on the show. But this is kind of an appropriate time to throw on some lost footage to give you a little bit of a meatier episode. But as I was listening to it back, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, my views on Batman have kind of changed drastically, so I'd like to let people at least know that, because I made a couple negative comments on there about Batman and the Superman books, actually. And I should clarify, I never had an issue with the Busiek run. The Busiek run's been outstanding. It was Action Comics with the delays, which we know was due to the artwork, which I'm really excited about that book right now, too. We got the Bizarro storyline going on with Donner and Johns, which is a lot of fun. We've got coming up Gary Frank on the book, and they're going to be doing a Legion storyline, which is going to be outstanding. So both Batman and Superman right now are characters that I'm super excited about again in a way that I haven't been in a while. It doesn't mean that All New Adam still isn't my favorite book. I'm really digging that book, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that, just to give people kind of a time placement on this. Both Action Comics and Batman were in a very different place when we recorded this. They were both books that were not being released as regularly with the creative teams who were supposed to be on that book. So it's just kind of a time placement here for anybody that happens to listen to this, whether you listen to it currently or somewhere down the road. And that's about it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this footage. I know it's very rough, and it was one of those things. I'm like, should I release it? Should I not? I'm glad I did now. Now that I listened to it back, I like a lot of our commentary a lot more than I thought I was going to. There was a lot of things that we said in there that I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm releasing this, because I like some of the things we talked about. There's certain parts I'm sure you can tell where I would have shaved some things down and cut out some footage, but it's kind of nice for you guys to see behind the scenes what a Raging Bullets episode looks like before we've edited it. Some of it looks as rough as some of the stuff we have edited, I'm sure. But there are certain things, I'm sure, where you're like, oh, geez, I've never heard a Raging Bullets episode sound like that. So you can kind of get a flavor for the fact that I do a decent amount of editing. I do cut some things out. I cut out some redundant conversation. I don't always cut that out, but in this case, there would have been some definite things that I would have chopped out of this one. But enjoy it. I hope the conversation was worth it, and I'm glad that I'm definitely very, very glad that I had an opportunity to put this on as some bonus footage, because there was a lot more to this conversation than I remember that was really enjoyable. So I'm glad that you guys get to kind of hear our views on this one. So hope you liked it, and we'll see. Like I said, probably Sunday or Monday. I'm not entirely sure yet. We'll be back with part 2 of this recording, because I definitely want to get that countdown stuff out there and our BK's bullets. So, see you soon.
The death and not the reading. Oh crud. The Damien birthing. Oh crud. What's the story? Yeah, actually, it's funny. I read this right after reading. I'm drawing a blank right now. What's the Batman Elseworld that's now continuity that has Batman and...
Oh, Son of the Demon.
Thank you. Okay, let me start over. Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Can you hear okay?
Hold on. Hey, okay, try talking again.
Again?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you good.
Yeah, you
How
sound
are you
good.
hearing me?
You sound like a schmuck.
Well, that's normal. There, turn off my AC I had in the background.
All right,
Okay.
Okay, your AC's off?
My AC is now off.
Wait, give me 1 second. Let me find out what episode we're on. I have no freaking clue. I am so messed up now. 51B. Okay.
51B.
Yeah.
51 Bravo.
There you go. All right. Everything's recording good. We're in business. Let me just get one thing ready, and then we'll be ready to go. Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Our sponsor for this episode is YouBuyNow.com. YouBuyNow.com is your toy and collectible source. They are now featuring the Smallville Series 2 complete action figure set. Jim, this is the set from that episode Justice. It features Impulse, Green Arrow, Clark Kent, Aquaman, and Cyborg. And they show, right when you go to the website, you see them like walking in that, that whole sequence right there. I'm like, this would look great on my desk. And you're going to hear like multiple things when I'm talking about this ad. I'm going to buy an action figure set. I don't know which one, and you're going to see why as I'm going through this ad. But the next thing is this Bizarro Deluxe 13-inch action figure. It's regularly $69.99. You know what? I just totally flubbed that. I never said the price.
Right.
I just put... Peace. A true roller coaster. Sinestro Corps and the crossovers didn't make my top 5. You got to get that?
Now, hold on. I have to turn off the ringer. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay.